My idiotic coworker humiliates herself in front of the entire company by pretending to be drunk after drinking the punch that I made. But after I told her in front of everyone that I made non-alcoholic punch, she stormed off in a fit of rage, as she was furious with me that I had somehow embarrassed her in front of the entire company. And now I'm honestly wondering if I'm at fault here for not explaining that my punch that I made for this party was non-alcoholic, because at this point I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. I'm a 25-year-old female and I recently attended a potluck-style work party, and I brought some punch with me, which has since caused a problem between myself and another coworker. And for the sake of the story, we'll call this coworker Sandy. Last week, my boss hosted a party at his house to celebrate the end of the busy season, as well as a job well done. All of my coworkers and their spouses were invited, and we decided it would work well to do a potluck to offset the cost of feeding everybody. For reference, there were about 35 people, since not everyone who came brought a spouse or a significant other. I volunteered to make a punch that I brought to previous work events that everyone said they enjoyed, as well as some other fruit to go with it. This was a casual party with alcohol present, but since I have some coworkers who don't drink, I didn't add any alcohol to this punch, and I figured that if people really wanted some, they would just add it themselves. Well, fast forward a couple of hours, and Sandy, who is a 42-year-old woman, is getting even louder and more dramatic than normal, and she's now stumbling around the party. I didn't think much of it, and I figured she brought her own drinks, or was adding some of the host's alcohol that was put out into something else. She then suddenly fell off the chair she was sitting on and made a big show of it, saying that it's because she was so drunk. And then she asked me in front of all of our coworkers what was in the punch that I made. Now at this point, I was very confused, and so I told her what was in it. It was a mix of ginger ale, 7-Up, orange juice, and a can of juice concentrate. She then wanted to know what alcohol I put in it because she's been drinking it all night and she is really feeling it. But I told her I didn't put any alcohol in it, and I asked if maybe somebody else had spiked the punch bowl, but nobody said they added anything. And one of my coworkers who doesn't drink even said that they had also been drinking the punch all evening and was still completely sober. I also would like to clarify that I understand how context can matter. Like if everyone else was really drunk, then that can make even a sober person feel like they're loaded, but that definitely was not the vibe. Sandy was literally the only person acting drunk. She then got really quiet and went off by herself to the bathroom. The rest of my coworkers and I exchanged some awkward glances and tried to laugh it off. She then left shortly afterwards, and I received an angry text message from her about how I shouldn't have embarrassed her like that, and that now she looks like an idiot in front of our bosses and the rest of our coworkers. She's been hostile to me at work ever since and is basically refusing to talk to me. I didn't think I did anything wrong, and most of my coworkers agree with me, but some say that I should have just let her go on thinking that the punch was alcoholic to try and save her from the embarrassment, and I'm left wondering if I'm the one in the wrong. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, first and foremost, any coworker who's trying to tell you that you should have lied to help her save face is a complete moron and absolutely wrong, because that is not the play here. You should not have to lie all because your coworker wanted to pretend to be drunk. So to that effect, absolutely you should have not done that, and no, you're not the jerk. Sandy made the conscious choice, an adult woman, to walk in there and be like, oh man, I am so drunk right now. I'm stumbling all over the place. Look how drunk I am. Like she really hammed it up like she's on stage and this is some kind of performance. And the fact that anybody would think that you have to play along with that stupid, idiotic behavior, because seriously, how on earth is this your fault? You literally just told the truth about what's really in that drink. You didn't embarrass her and you didn't do anything to make her look bad. She's the one that made herself look bad. Like, are you kidding me right now? So it is so silly to me that she's trying to be like, wow, you embarrassed me in front of everybody. When it's like, no, I didn't. I didn't do anything to you. You embarrassed yourself by the way you acted. Because of course she wasn't actually drunk. She just wanted attention. And guess what? She definitely got that attention, but not in the way that she wanted. So no, you're not the jerk here. You literally didn't do anything wrong. You literally just wanted to show up to a party, but instead, Sandy decided to drag you into her weird masquerade as if it's somehow your responsibility to like manage her feelings. So no, you're not the jerk. You didn't do anything wrong. And I think that Sandy's an idiot for acting the way that she did. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for wanting to cut off communication with my adoptive mom after she started treating me differently due to my child? Here's what happened. Okay, so my biological parents disowned me as a teenager because I left the religion I was raised in, and I haven't seen them since I was 17 years old. I'm now almost 30, and in 2021, a couple I've known since I was a teenager legally adopted me. I worked with my adopted mom, who I will call Erin, since I worked with her at my first job when I was 14 years old. I called her my spare mom over the years, since I didn't have a real mom anymore, Erin and her husband, who we will call Jacob, have always been good to me and helped me out here and there, particularly financially. The biggest thing I would say they've done for me is that they've bought me a new used car in 2020 for about $3,000, which is right when my old vehicle died on me. Now, I offered to pay them back, but they wouldn't let me, and I'm definitely very grateful for their help. Now, part of the reason the adoption happened was that I had recently told them I was scared of something happening to me and my biological parents being contacted to make decisions for me. With their religion, I knew that the biological parents would, for instance, let me pass away if I needed a blood transfusion because their religion forbids it. When my adoptive parents presented me with the idea of adult adoption, that was a big part of why I accepted it. That, and to be honest, I've always been lonely and wished that I had a family, and I wanted to believe that they were my family now. I wouldn't say we've ever been super close. We live in the same town, and I have usually seen them 1 to 3 times a year at the most for reference. And I didn't really expect the legal adoption to change our relationship, but since they adopted me, a lot has changed, both with me and my personal life and my relationship with Erin. I got married and had a baby, and when I got engaged, Erin was one of the first people I sent a message to tell, but when she got it, she just read it and ignored it for days. Eventually, she told me that she's not ignoring me and that she just has a lot going on, and then it was never brought up ever again. My feelings were hurt because I thought that she'd at least expect some happiness for me or something like that, but I got literally no reply ever, and then she moved on to chatting about other things. Down the road, my now husband and I eloped. If she had made me feel like she cared, I probably would have invited Erin, but as it was, she found out afterwards like everybody else, and she seemed offended that she hadn't been invited. Well, not long after I was married, I finally got pregnant. And again, Erin was one of the first people that I told. Her response to this news was to say, "Well, I'll probably be happy for you once I get used to the idea." And again, I was very hurt, and I felt rejected and unsupported. As my pregnancy progressed, Erin warmed up to the idea to the point where she was pressuring me to bring that belly around more and making rude comments about how I didn't come over enough. And let me also just add that she never actually invited me over or anything, but instead she just complained. When I had my baby, she was the only person who insisted on being at the hospital to meet my baby after my emergency C-section when I didn't want any visitors. She has since then only seen my baby a couple of times. My husband and I both work full-time, and we alternate days, so one of us is always home with the baby, and whoever is home doesn't have the car. And I'm also dealing with some newly diagnosed health issues, so I have very little energy or free time. Erin has continued to complain that she doesn't see my baby enough, but again, never actually invites me over or asks to come over or actually plan anything. She has even taken my baby out of my arms when I've said no to her holding her and jokingly refused to give her back. She seems very interested in having a relationship with my baby, but at this point, I barely have a relationship with Erin, and I don't feel like making an effort to ensure that they have a relationship with how she's been to me the last few years. She's also told me some weird things that made me certain that I will never leave her alone with my baby. For example, when she was watching her friend's baby and it was fussy, she put it on her non-lactating chest to try and calm it down. And she told me this like it was a totally normal thing to do, and I was shocked to even say anything about it. I had plans to see Erin and Jacob around the holidays, but Erin sent me a message saying, "I can't wait to see your baby." And I said, "And me too, right?" She responded by saying, "Well, of course, because you carry the baby in." And this was the last straw for me, and I finally went off on a little rant, and I told Erin how I feel about a lot of things that she's done and said. Her response was to try and call me 12 times in a row and leave me guilt-tripping voicemails about how she was just gonna sit in the public and cry. She did apologize, but never offered any explanation for the way she's responded when I've tried to share my happy news with her. I got her to agree to give me some space, but she does keep texting me for pictures of my daughter. I'm at a point where I don't feel like having a relationship with Erin at all, but I feel a strong sense of obligation to keep her in my life because of everything they've done for me in the past. I don't enjoy her company, and I haven't in several years. And this is to the point that I've made up excuses to leave early or just avoid her altogether. She's very frustrating to me to talk to, and it feels like I'm always just talked over, and the conversation gets turned to being about Erin. She tends to be very negative too, and mostly does a lot of complaining when we talk, and I find her mentally taxing to be around. Being around her stresses me out, and I hate that since I had a baby, she feels like I'm obligated to see her more and all this other stuff. There is a lot more that's happened and been said between us that I can put there, but essentially, I want to know how to end this relationship with her, or if I'm a jerk for wanting to do that. I would be more than happy to never see her again. She's never felt like family to me. Calling her mom has always felt extremely uncomfortable, and I feel sometimes like she only cares about my baby. Also, she has 2 biological adult children children of her own, so it's not like she never had any baby time. I would love to get some advice on ways to tactfully tell her I don't want her in my life anymore, because I typically avoid confrontation, and I am a bit of a people pleaser, so hurting her feelings and standing my ground is a scary idea to me. What should I do? Yeah, your adoptive mom is absolutely being toxic. You mean to tell me that she's like completely neglectful of all these things that have happened in your life, but the second there's a child involved, she's suddenly like, oh, let me see the baby. I want to be around the baby. Let me take care of her. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? The fact that you try to like breastfeed another baby that isn't yours, in my opinion, is the biggest red flag you have to look out for. Like that alone is the biggest mark of you saying, hey, you're never gonna see my child. So I know if I was in your shoes, I would just slowly start to fade into the background. That's my favorite thing to do with someone who is absolutely toxic and has no place in my life anymore. And from the sounds of it, it kind of seems like Erin fits the bill. So hopefully this all works out for you, because the way she's acting is incredibly weird. My parents won't let me go to a concert that I was really excited about. And they've even gone as far as trying to insinuate that they would take away my tuition in the past if I ever did things that they didn't like. So now I feel like I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place, because at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm an 18-year-old female and I'm on university break. Last May, I decided to buy tickets with my friends to go to a concert to see an artist co-headlining with another artist that I've liked since I was 14 years old or so. I'm going with friends, and one of them is someone I haven't seen in a while because she goes to school 3 hours away, so this was really important to me. I told my dad last week of my plans, and he didn't really react much and just said okay, but then I told my mom. Well, my mom started yelling at me and told me that because we're Christians, I shouldn't go see a non-Christian artist. In June though, I went to a non-Christian concert with my other friends, and even then they begrudgingly accepted, and my mom told me that it didn't add anything in my life and that concerts had no benefits. My mom villainized and accused me of being so obsessed with music and concerts and made me feel bad for wanting to do so. But I love music, I love playing it, and I even want to work in the music industry when I'm older. I'm doing some internships for it right now. I manage an artist and he's having his first show soon. She called me argumentative and told me that I acted like I knew everything and always combated people when they tried to tell me the right thing. My mom is also concerned about concert safety and says that people who go to concerts do all kinds of substances, they do some weird things and indulge in bad behaviors. Now there is security at the venue, and I'm going to be with my friends at all times, and I'm either getting a ride there from trusted people or taking a ride share. She then gave me an infographic of different tragedies that happen at concerts, like with Ariana Grande, Travis Scott, and various other stuff. But it's like I'm Canadian, so some of these things just don't happen here. My sister tried to help and moderate a discussion, but my mom ignored us and got really upset. She basically ignored me and told us we were being unreasonable and arguing. She told us that because the both of us are going to visit our older sister in New York later this spring, we are already going to have fun. My mom does not listen to me at all, and she has shut me down completely. My concert is tomorrow and I still want to go, but my parents will not let me. If I do go anyways, they will likely take away my tuition, as they have threatened to do so in the past. So at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, I think first and foremost, you have every right to go and do whatever you want when it comes to whatever concert there might be going on. Like, you are 18 years old, so you are an adult, so yes, you could go if you want to. But in my opinion, I just don't think it would be worth it. They've threatened to take away your tuition over other things, and the fact that they would even try and do that over a concert of all things, like, that is so crazy, I just can't imagine. So yeah, you could go to this concert anyways and be like, oh, I'm gonna go and there's nothing you can do about it, but based on the way your parents act and how irrational they are, I honestly just don't think it's worth it. So if I was in your shoes, there's no way I would go to that concert, because your parents sound incredibly toxic. My entitled friend has an awful attitude, as she is constantly trying to tell me what I should and shouldn't do, while also trying to rule my life entirely. And I'm honestly so exhausted dealing with this that at this point, I don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I'm currently in 11th grade and I'm about to enter my 12th grade for further studies. I have this Moroccan Pakistani friend who was raised in the United Kingdom, and we became friends since we were both the odd ones out and the ones who were left from toxic friend groups. She was overall pretty cool. We got to hang out and make jokes that were stupid stuff and stuff like that, and it was pretty fun. Every day was like an adventure to me, and it felt like the best part of my life. However, I'd like to discuss about the cons of having her as a friend, as it concerns and irritates me the most. I don't want to talk to her about this, since she is the type of negative person that complains every time and basically ruins the mood sometimes as well. Anyways, just recently, we were deciding on what subjects to choose for 12th grade. I wanted to pursue dentistry, and I took biology and chemistry already, but she kept on insisting that I must take mechanical maths, and maths is split in two different aspects in the 12th grade, namely statistics and mechanical. I asked her why I've already already got the subjects I require, and she told me that she's researched dentistry university requirements and that they want maths as well, and she just kept forcing this reality on me. When she spoke, it was like she was commanding me, as if pressuring me to take mechanical maths as well. I know different universities have different requirements, and that maths is a subject where universities praise someone for doing, and yet the dentistry universities are either too expensive or straight up BS. So I wish to go for another university with biology or chemistry studies within them themselves so that I can then apply for dentistry or other medical field careers. But she simply kept insisting, and I genuinely hated it. It was over and over again. And by the way, it's my future, and she has no privilege to be so rude and so commanding of me to take a stupid subject. Additionally, she kept on trying to hook me up with the thought of getting a tutor. She would say, next year I'm getting a tutor and I just don't care. 12th graders need tutors, and if you do not have one, your test will be so hard, and you're gonna have less time for yourself due to constant studying. Once I get one, I will always ask for homework. You should get a tutor as well. She acted like she was the one making my choices, which makes me extremely irritated, and I just don't listen to her on this aspect at all. I know my grades in maths and chemistry are a bit awful at the moment, but I've been trying to improve them all over and over, and I'm not that hopeless to the point that I need a tutor. She also repeats the phrase, I don't care a lot, which pisses me off since no one is forcing her to say this crap. She acts so stubborn as well. She also is a little bit overdramatic and horribly emotional. Like she had a rage fit over someone touching her book once, and a breakdown from how she can't drop computer science as a subject. I really hope she could change for the better, but I seriously just don't want to listen to her like this anymore. I still like her positive side, yet I will always remember her negative side to prevent becoming someone like this. So truly, is this a friend I should keep around? Because at this point, I don't know what to do. Okay, honestly, I think this is not one of those friends that's like good for you or in any way gonna make you a better person. It seems like she's kind of a snob and one of those people who probably talks about other people behind your back, and that sounds obnoxious in my opinion. So in my opinion, this might just be one of those friends that you slowly fade away from because they truly are not gonna help you with your choices in the slightest. Today, I filed a complaint against a coworker, and now I'm wondering if I was unreasonable, because at this point, I'm worried that they're gonna lie about me, and I seriously now don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, so I work at a fine dining steakhouse. My job is similar to being a busser, but you do have to do a little bit more than just bus. You grab waters and sodas, you refill them, you grab bread, clear things between courses, box up the to-go orders, and pretty much anything the server does when they aren't around. And there is usually at least 10 server assistants on the night shifts. Well, anyways, yesterday I was supposed to work at 10 o'clock in the morning, go on break probably at around 3 o'clock, and then return at 4 to be first cut for the dinner shift. Before I went in, a coworker who was coming in at 12 and closing the restaurant after a break texted me asking if I would close for him. Now, I knew it would take up my entire day, but I said yes and I got it approved. So I go on break at 2:30 because it was slow in the morning, and then returned at 5:30 for this closing shift. When I get there, 2 other girls who are service assistants tell me that I'm not closing and that one of them had made the switch with the aforementioned guy who came in at 12. But I told them that I made the switch in the morning. I got it approved and specifically came back an hour and a half late because I made this switch. I even have text message proof, but they dismissed me. And I wasn't about to argue about it, so I just let it go. But the guy I made a switch with said that he never talked to them. When I get cut, I'm told to do side work by these 2 girls, but I told them that I needed a moment to help servers clean up in an area where their service assistant just left their tables dirty and went home. Not even 5 minutes passes by before they're up in my face yelling at me to do my side work. So I told them it's not my fault the other server left, and that barking orders at me wouldn't make me go any faster. So I left the dirty tables behind, I did my side work, and I clocked out, but complained to a manager before leaving, who took it way more seriously than I expected a restaurant manager to do. She then apologized and said that she would talk to them. Now, part of me only complained about them because I figured they would do it too, so I did it before they could. I have work today, and I'm afraid of what they're going to say. They are not above lying, so they could easily say that I called them a jerk or something like that. So seriously, am I in the wrong in this situation? Because right now I am very stressed out and I seriously don't know what to do. Oh man, I am so glad you complained to your manager, and I'm so glad that your manager is taking this seriously, because everything they did in this scenario is so wrong. Because first and foremost, you are 100% right. Those 2 girls absolutely would have complained about you the second they get the chance. They seem like those kind of petty coworkers who are out to ruin everybody else's day, and I guarantee you they would have done the same thing to you if given the opportunity. So the fact that you struck while the iron was hot and said something before they could is crucial in this scenario, because they have no right to talk to you as if they're your manager. Which, by the way, fun fact, they're definitely not. They have no say in what you you can and cannot do for work, and they definitely cannot boss you around in any kind of way. So that for me is a huge red flag. And also for them to act like, you're doing this wrong, when you literally have proof that you're switching in, like that is so annoying. And I think it would be smart to show that message to your manager and be like, look, I've got proof that I switched in, so I don't know what they're talking about. And also absolutely include that conversation you had with the other coworker, where he's basically like, yeah, I never talked to them about this. Like from the sounds of it, it really seems like they're trying to like steal time from someone else and work the system in some kind of way where they come in and do very little while also getting you to do their job. Like that's all this kind of screams to me in my opinion, and that is incredibly weird and so toxic. So no, you didn't do anything wrong. I would sit on business and let nature take its course. You need to show up to work with your head held high and have absolute confidence that this will work out. And if they really do try to lie about your character and like try to make things up, then guess what? That's also not allowed, and in some cases incredibly illegal. Because if these people really want to take that route, then they will very quickly find themselves without a job. My entitled Karen friend refuses to take me to the hospital right after my water broke, saying that we could just have the baby at her house instead. Here's what happened. This happened a few decades ago. So I had been somewhere with my friends, and afterward they invited me to visit their home for a while in the evening. We stopped by a corner store for snacks, and while perusing some of the goodies, it felt like I suddenly had peed myself. I was full term and my water had broken inside the store. It wasn't anything extreme, but it was a pretty good sign that my baby would be here quite soon. So I told my friends with whom I was riding, and then we went to her house. At first I thought it was to drop her kids off with her husband, and then she would take me to the hospital. But when we arrived, we went inside and I told her, okay, now I gotta get to the hospital. I knew this because I had already been there a few days before for a false labor, and the doctor literally told me that it will be any day now. But my friend's response absolutely blew my mind. She said, no, you can have the baby here. She was just cool as a cucumber saying this as well. Since I was getting into a more advanced phase of labor pretty quickly, I couldn't remain standing. So she got some towels for me to sit on so I wouldn't get her sofa wet while sitting on it. She was seriously going to try to force me to have my baby at her house. I told her again, no, you don't understand. I need to get to the hospital. But she wouldn't budge. Well, I wasn't willing to do this at her house with her husband and her kids there. I had a doctor and a hospital all arranged, and the last possible second, she decides to try and hold me hostage and force me to have my baby at her house. I said I needed to use the phone. There were no cell phones back then when this happened, so I used her house phone and called my mom and covered the phone with my mouth and my hand and spoke very quietly, whispering directly into the phone. I said I'm at my friend's house, my water just broke, and she is refusing to take me to the hospital. My mom replied quickly and said, I'll be right there. She didn't live far away, so in a few minutes there was a knock at the door. They answered and my mom said, I'm here to get my daughter. She brought one of the neighbors to help her out. They burst into the door after saying that, and one on each side, they grabbed me and carried me to the car. The labor was so advanced I could barely stand anymore. They were racing to the hospital and got me there just in time to get me prepped and call my doctor. The doctor made it on very short notice, and in a few minutes my new baby was here. But what my friend did was infuriating to me. It just sucked the joy out of my entire experience. After that, I knew she could not be trusted. I did not go to a doctor and make arrangements to have a safe birth and protect my baby in case there was any last-minute problems, just to have someone try and hijack my baby's birth and force me to do what she decided just because I was stuck with her at that time. And she made no efforts at her house to get anything ready. I guess she thought that this was just gonna happen on her dirty floors. I mean, honestly, who does that? Who hijacks someone else's labor, basically holds them hostage, and forces them to forego the sanitary hospital where any birth emergencies can be dealt with by an experienced physician and hospital staff, and all the benefits of advanced medical care one has access to in a hospital. And worst of all, after this happened, this lady never apologized. Thankfully, I moved pretty soon after that, and I haven't seen them in several years. How crazy do you have to be to try and force someone to have birth at your own house? First off, who would want that? That sounds like a miserable experience for everybody around. There's about to be a small human on your floor. You really want to deal with that? I'd rather have a doctor deal with that. I wouldn't know the first thing of how to handle that. Crazy stuff all around, and good for this original poster for cutting this person out of their life, because this person is very clearly not your friend, and she does not have your best interests in mind in the slightest. My wife just told me that she's in love with another man, and I honestly don't know what to do. 4 years ago, I had a roommate, and we partied a lot. I made my fair share of mistakes, and so did my girlfriend at the time. We both cheated on each other, but not in a physical way, but we both categorized it as cheating, and it was her with my roommate. In October October of 2018, my girlfriend and I got married. 4 years later, I've got a 2-year-old son, and my relationship with my wife has been good. It has been rocky at times, but we've always stayed connected at a good level. There were about 3 to 4 times early on in our marriage when she was struggling with my cheating on her and messaged my ex-roommate to get back at me. I don't know what their conversation said, but she said it was mostly venting, and then she would send him a message saying, "I miss you," and then she would block him. She would admit to me after each time she would message him, and was always an emotional mess. We finally got to a point that he was blocked on everything, and she hasn't been in communication with him for over a year. Fast forward to a month ago, my wife was acting really weird for a few days and would not touch me or talk to me. She then admitted she's been having really weird dreams about my ex-roommate that she cheated on me with. She told me that it wasn't anything physical, if you know what I mean, but it was like he almost was trying to tell her something. At this point, I was really distraught by what she said, even though it was just a dream, and told her that I needed her to keep those things to herself in the future unless she felt like it was affecting our relationship and connection, mostly because he has become a pretty big trigger for me and kickstarts a lot of anxiety. Well, fast forward to 3 days ago, and my wife has been extremely distant and doesn't want to spend any time with me, and has been going on long drives by herself while I stay home in the evenings. She comes home one night and finally tells me that she not only still has feelings for my ex-roommate that she cheated on me with, but that she is in love with him. She says that she hasn't had any communication with him, but she had a conversation with a mutual friend about a month ago, and the mutual friend told her that my ex-roommate is head over heels for my wife and would marry her tomorrow if he could. She also tells me that she trusts this guy more than anyone in the world, including me, and she doesn't think she would ever be able to stop caring and checking up on him all the time. At this point, I'm devastated. I can't help but think that my marriage is almost over, despite the fact that she tells me she would never leave me for him, even though she has these feelings. I got on her computer the other night while she was gone and found that she's been stalking all of his social media almost daily for the past month and has been listening to all the songs he dedicated to her, as well as listening to playlists labeled as Forbidden Love. She told me that it's not even a competition and she would never consider leaving me, but it's very hard to believe her considering how distant she has been and how much it has affected our relationship. I talked to her again last night and she told me that she thinks we both need to go to therapy to work on this, and that she thinks the only way to have closure with this guy is to meet up with him and talk, which is what she thinks the therapist will tell her as well. I told her that I would consider our relationship over if she were to meet up or talk with this guy in any way, shape, or form. I did tell her, however, that I may be willing to compromise if a therapist told her that talking to him was the only way to resolve this issue. I can't help but feeling like talking to this guy is going to just open up the door further and I'll be completely losing her. I love my wife and would literally do anything for her, but I don't trust her at all right now, and it's absolutely destroying me inside. What should I do? Your wife is doing something that's incredibly toxic. She's going after a guy she hasn't even talked to in years, and quite literally, she is in love with a fantasy. She is head over heels for some guy she hasn't talked to in a long time. Like, this guy could be a complete creep at this point in his life. She literally does not know him, and all the red flags are there for this original poster. She's basically saying that she would rather be with this guy than with him, and this is all in spite of their child that they have together. This lady is willing to throw away her marriage just to get with some roommate that she cheated on you with. I mean, in my opinion, this does not sound like a good situation. If I were in your shoes, I would be securing a lawyer like yesterday. There is no way I would move forward without somebody to have my back, especially if my wife is talking about leaving me. This really is a terrible situation, but if you think therapy might help this situation, I think you can go ahead and do it. But to be completely honest, this does not look promising, and I would just be ready to protect yourself as well as your child in case your wife decides to leave you. My friend is extremely toxic and very manipulative, and I don't know how to handle them or what to do in this situation. The title says it all. I'm struggling to maintain a relationship with one of my longtime friends due to how toxic and manipulative they act. So for a bit of context, I have been friends with her since I was around 16 years old. We met while we were in high school, and we have formed a very close friendship since then. I would probably call her my closest and best friend. Recently, her behavior has become more and more toxic and manipulative. I could write a huge post about all the instances I could recall, but I will give some short examples to keep it brief. She has told multiple lies about me as well as our other mutual friends to many other people, and most of the times these allegations involve serious stuff. She also likes painting herself, herself, as if she has done nothing wrong, which is just honestly not the case. She often tries to gaslight me whenever we argue and invalidate my feelings, making it seem as if I'm causing an issue when I'm just trying to express my feelings about how she has treated me. She can be quite unreliable, making plans and then canceling last minute at the expense of everyone else around her. I could go on further about her behavior, but I'll get down to my main point. Our mutual friend group and myself have begun to discuss her behavior and share our experiences of it with one another. After doing so, we are at a loss on how to deal with her. Some people want to organize an intervention for her as a last resort, and others want to just cut her off entirely. I understand that most people will read this and come to the conclusion that cutting her off is the healthiest choice. However, I want to try my best to rectify this situation and see if she can resolve her issues and behavior. She is a very good friend of mine, and I know that she is capable of being better. Does anyone have any similar experiences or helpful advice that they could share? If an intervention is a good idea, how should we go about organizing one? What should I do? I've got to be honest, when someone starts making up lies that include serious accusations and then goes around gaslighting people and trying to invalidate how you feel, as well as causing issues and all these other problems, this is not someone that I would then consider a friend. And you know what? I don't think you need an intervention to cut this person out of your life. If I was a friend in this friend group, I would have cut her off a long time ago and said, guys, if you keep hanging out with her, I'm not going to stick around. I do not need to have that kind of energy in my life, and I refuse to let anybody talk to me like that. I don't care who they are, especially when there's repeated behavior like this that only proves that they are not willing to change. And that is honestly not my fault. I think if you really did want to have some kind of intervention, you certainly could, but I can only see this making things worse, because this doesn't sound like this is someone who wants to change. And sure, if you're not comfortable with just completely cutting her off all of a sudden, then you can take the slow approach and slowly but surely gradually distance yourself away from this person, while also trying to find some kind of healthy relationship with others where you can genuinely say they're your friend and they're not going to be abusive towards you, which is exactly what this person has been to you. So hopefully this goes well, because at the end of the day, you can't force somebody to change, especially if they are not willing to change themselves. My family acts as if I'm committing a crime for not marrying someone with a good profession so I can stay home and never work. And at this point, I just don't know how to deal with this. I come from a culture which believes that only stupid people marry for love. This brainwashing has come back up when a family member of mine kept flaunting her wealth. As a side note, she did not earn any of this money, but she married someone who did earn all that money, and she tries to pass it off as her hard work. I felt stupid at dinner yesterday because one of my parents pointed out that this relative of ours will never have to face the same issues I will. And while I disagree logically, emotionally it stung for some reason. They also put so many doubts in my head while comparing me to my relative, saying stuff like, wouldn't you want a life where you can just focus on your well-being? Now, I'm not a career-driven person. I don't mind my job, and I work so we can pay rent and reach our goals. But my family thinks that this isn't the way it should be, and that he already has his wealth set up, and that I should just go enjoy it. But in reality, me and my significant other are both young and figuring out life and have a vision of how we want our married life to be, as well as the plans of what we're going to be working towards. Me and my parents keep having fights because I tell them I wasn't thinking in this way when I met my significant other. I just clicked with him and we went from there. But they keep convincing me I'm making a big mistake and should somehow change course. I just feel so confused and deflated. I really don't care that my significant other is not a doctor, an architect, or a lawyer. These are the professions my family only sees as valid. He has a job and is hardworking, even starting a side business, so he's not some deadbeat. And only if I get to stay home will they see this as a good marriage. I feel like love has nothing to do with how convenient someone is able to make your life. But they don't believe me. I don't want to lose them, but I also don't want my relationship to be ruined due to the thoughts they're putting in my head. I really love my boyfriend, and I don't want my family's toxic conditioning to mess it up, nor do I want to end up not talking to them. My boyfriend and I live in our own apartment, and no, he doesn't know about any of these things that my parents keep saying about him, but he knows they are very religious and kind of toxic sometimes. What should I do? In my opinion, I really do think that you should tell your boyfriend exactly what your family is saying about him. It's better to say it now than 10 years down the line when they're saying this behind his back and he finds out in some roundabout way. That would be absolutely tragic. And I honestly don't blame you for saying, you know what, I love my significant other and I want to marry them just as they are. And I don't care that they are not rich. That, in my opinion, is how any loving marriage should be. You should love the person for who they are and what they bring to the table. And I'm not talking about financially. Your family also seems very toxic. Their attitude towards marriage and how you should just marry somebody who's rich basically is such a terrible precedent to set. I mean, what kind of future does that guarantee for you and your partner? Especially if you don't even know that you love this person. You're only in it for money. How disgusting and shallow can you get? There's obviously cultural differences going on here, and I totally understand that, but I think the original poster has it right. If you don't love your partner, then it's really not going to work out. I would much rather be with somebody who loves me for who they are, but they don't have a lot of money, instead of having someone who does have money and they only turn into some controlling psychopath that I'll never get away from. That sounds like an absolute nightmare. I think if anything, it's time to set some serious boundaries with your family. You need to tell them straight up, no, you cannot talk about my future husband like that. I love him and this is just how it's gonna be. And if you setting boundaries pushes them away, then that's their problem. You do not have to deal with those kind of comments, and you do not need that kind of energy in your life. Today, I messed up by accusing my boyfriend of cheating. So the title is basically self-explanatory. My boyfriend, by the name of James, that's not his real name, is basically the man of my dreams. 8 years ago, I met him and I fell in love. He checked all the boxes of a good, honest man. He took care of his children, who I have also fell in love with. He had his own place, his own car, and everything. 8 years of love, bliss, acceptance, everything. But lately, things started to become weird and I couldn't understand why. He started to become very secretive. He started giving me one-word answers or very short answers overall. He started becoming very protective of his phone, which is very unlike him, as we have an open door policy on phones. He has the code to mine and I have the code to his. And whenever he looked at his phone, he would smile, and when I would ask him what he was looking at, he would say nothing and quickly put his phone down. This all started about a month ago. I told my closest girlfriends and my sister about all of this, and they all came to the conclusion that he was cheating on me. I thought there is no way in the world he could do that, because that's not his character at all, and they suggested I look up signs of cheating. I did, and he checked all of the boxes of cheating. And to say it broke me is an understatement, and they all comforted me. So I stayed the night at my girlfriend's house, and all night James was calling and texting me. I finally texted him back, saying I was spending the night at my girlfriend's house, and that I'll be home in the next day or two, and he said okay. 2 nights later, he texted me if I was coming home today, and I said yes. The girls convinced me to go to the house to confront him, and that they would be there for support. As we drive to the house, I walked into the house with him standing there with a smile on his face, dressed up to the nines, and as he tries to kiss me, I back away, and my friends immediately enter the house and read him the riot act, while I stand there trying not to cry my eyes out. As they continue, he finally yells, "What is going on?" And that's when one of my friends says, "You've been cheating on her." My boyfriend then says, "What? No, I haven't. What's going on?" My girlfriend then says that he needs to prove it. As he tries to talk to me, they push him back and tell him not to go near me, and I then tell them to let him through. And then he asks me if I think that he really has been cheating on me. And after that, I shake my head and I say yes. But he defends himself by saying that he hasn't. So then I ask him, well, how do I know that? What's your proof? He then reminds me that today is September 7th. And at first, today's date didn't mean anything to me. It simply was just another date. But eventually, it dawned on me. September 7th is our 8th anniversary, and my friends and I can't believe it. He then tells me that he's been planning this for a month, and he's sorry for being so secretive, but he wanted it to be a surprise. My girlfriends then ask him about why he's being so secretive on the phone in the first place, and further explains that she thinks that just because it's the anniversary of you guys getting together doesn't absolve him of anything. And that's when he says, "You're right." He then takes my hand and looks me in the eyes and says, "Since the day I met you, I knew I found the one. I've wanted to spend the rest of my life with you, and you are the woman I wanted to have my children." He then gets down on one knee and asks me to marry him right there. At this point, it's silent, and between the tears, I say yes, and we become engaged and share hugs and kisses. He then invites my friends to have dinner with all of us. After dinner, things are much lighter, and we are at least able to talk about what happened and have a good laugh. We all eventually apologized for the way we were acting, and he thankfully forgave us all. I'm now just so excited and happy to be newly engaged. If this isn't a lesson in using your words before jumping to crazy conclusions, then I don't know what is. I mean, seriously, what was the original poster thinking? This could have gone horribly. He very easily could have said, "You know what? I don't want to marry you." And also, how on earth can someone prove that they're not cheating? Like, what kind of evidence did you expect him to bring up? Like, how can you possibly prove that you're not being unfaithful? In the end, though, I guess it kind of worked out, but I really think that the original poster needs to work on themselves if they want this marriage to last, because what they just did could have ended horribly, and they're lucky that they have a boyfriend who actually cares. My girlfriend gets very defensive and takes any casual suggestion as an attack on her intelligence, and I honestly don't know what to do. you. To preface this, yes, I plan on talking to her about this one-on-one very soon, but I'm not entirely sure how. We've been dating for about 6 months, and my girlfriend has a history of emotional abuse from her brother. He would construe stories to other people to make her seem like an idiot or the one in the wrong, especially as a child. He would blame her for things and include enough truth in his stories just for it to be plausible, and then her parents would believe him. As a result, she is swift to isolate anything anyone says to her and call it out if it appears to her as if someone is subtly lying or trying to gaslight. She quickly becomes defensive, assuming the other person is trying to manipulate and gaslight her. The problem is that this has reared its ugly head in our relationship several times and gets ugly quick. For example, an appliance stopped working in her home. I told her when that happens, I usually check the fuse board. Immediately, she was utterly bewildered that I made such an obvious suggestion. Of course, that was the first thing she checked. For me to even suggest something so simple, I must have been subtly attempting to belittle her intelligence. When I move to explain and defend myself, the problem becomes that I'm prioritizing protecting myself instead of acknowledging how I made her feel. It then became a mental spike trap, where if I attempt to move in any direction in the argument, she highlights an entirely unforeseen angle to me, twisting what I'm saying, or highlights an apparent contradiction of what I've said in the discussion or to something in the past. It got to the point where I was mentally paralyzed and shut down, fearing I could not formulate anything to say that would not cause her to flip out at me. I had to respond with concise messages just to escape the argument. The only thing I could take from the argument was that if I make a suggestion that might be obvious or she might have thought about, I should highlight it as such. There have been a few things like this, and I realized today it's making me scared to communicate with her. She's on holiday now. Before she left, she realized she didn't have time to shower before going to her friend's house. So I made the suggestion saying, perhaps you already thought of it, but maybe you could just explain to your friend the situation and shower there. But it wasn't enough, and she commented that she, of course, had already thought about doing that. My only alternative would be to passively acknowledge she had a problem and not give any helpful suggestions for fear of a reaction. This was when it clicked for me. I do not want to end up in a relationship where I am scared to suggest much of anything. I spent time formulating that question to soften it as much as possible, half bracing for a negative reaction in case I wasn't going far enough. I've realized I'm scared to make these innocent, well-intended kind of suggestions. I need her to drop this pretense that I am looking to attack her by trying to be helpful. How do I approach this conversation with her? What should I do? The way your girlfriend is acting is completely inappropriate. You've only been dating her for 6 months and this is how she's treating you? I mean, that just doesn't sound like a healthy relationship. And it doesn't sound like you're doing anything crazy. I would personally be very sympathetic and understanding if she was going through something in her personal life and she just needed to vent. And maybe in that moment of weakness, she doesn't need someone to suggest solutions to her problems. She just needs someone to listen. If that were the case, then I would say, yeah, don't give suggestions, just listen. She doesn't want suggestions at this point. But for this situation, this is literally her freaking out over an appliance or over the fact that she couldn't take a shower before she left. The way she is acting is completely irrational and not something you should deal with in the slightest. And you're right, I wouldn't want to be in a relationship either where I'm too afraid to talk to my partner. There's no way that's gonna slide. And these interactions sound like just a normal human conversation. I'm not getting out of this that the original poster is being overbearing in this situation. He is even trying to soften these questions enough where he's basically walking on eggshells. So in my opinion, the original poster is not the problem, it's the girlfriend. If I were in your shoes, as soon as she comes back, I would say, look, we need to have a talk. And then I would lay out exactly how I feel. If she's more than willing to put you down and speak so terribly to you after making a simple suggestion, such as looking at the fuse box if the appliance isn't working, then by all means she should be ready to have the truth broken to her. That's just my opinion on this matter. You should not have to deal with that, and you should not be in this kind of environment. Because in my opinion, at the end of the day, her attitude and the way she gets super defensive over everything is only going to cause a bigger rift between the two of you in this relationship. An entitled Karen tries to force me to babysit her child despite having never met her or her child ever in my life. And when I said no, this lady freaked out on me. Here's what happened. So I was on a client's boat to take measurements for a job that they'd like me to do. The place they're docked is along a lovely sidewalk that is open to the public. I was on the front deck when I heard a family walk by. I was aware of them, but I didn't look up. That is, until I heard a shrill voice call for me. Excuse me. It spooked me as they were so close. So I looked up and there was a mother and a child standing on the sidewalk in front of the boat. I looked at them and said, sorry, you snuck up on me. Can I help you? Sometimes people stop to ask me for directions to a bathroom or they're just curious about what I'm doing. So randomly striking up a conversation isn't super uncommon. I'm happy to help or even just to have have a bit of conversation. This entitled Karen looks me square in the eye and says, "Hey, can you watch my kid for a minute?" No explanation, no greeting, nothing. I was stunned into silence for a second while my brain tried to process what she just said. The mother then interjected before I even had a chance to try and make a response. She said, "It's okay. She can just hang out on your boat with you." And again, completely flabbergasted. She can do what? Her child looked to be kindergarten age, maybe even younger. Before she could start walking toward the pier, I finally snapped out of it and gained enough brain power to speak up. I said to her, sorry, no, this isn't my boat." Then she says, "Oh, well, whose boat is this?" And as I was explaining that this is my client's boat, she then demands that whoever it is that owns this boat needs to come out right now so she can talk to him. I then had to raise my voice just a little bit and say, "Ma'am, I'm working." And I said this while holding up a bunch of measuring tools, just to try and prove that I wasn't lying. But this entitled Karen was not having it. She then tried to excuse it by saying that it would just be a minute. And at this point, I was appalled. I told her again, "Sorry, no, I cannot do that." I was about to say more, but she interrupted me again before I could continue. "Well, can you get off the boat and just watch her here then?" Again, completely shocked and absolutely stunned. "I am working," I said a bit slower. "I'm sure my boss wouldn't appreciate me watching some stranger's kids while I'm on the clock." Again, I was about to say more, but her child was whining and pulling violently on her mother's hand. And that finally snapped this entitled Karen out of her stupor. She just said, "Fine," snapping suddenly and dragging her child away up the steps. I'm not gonna lie, it was a really odd and unnerving situation, and my heart was beating really fast afterwards. I am in complete shock. Boats and docks are not a safe place for children, especially without a life jacket, and a strange child at that. I don't know if they can swim or what their history is of water, and what about their behavior? Will they listen to any of my instructions or directions? Why would you give your child to a complete stranger working in a place that is not safe or suitable for kids? And while someone's working, next time I'm gonna see if the owner of the boat can reverse their boat into the dock so that I won't have to face the general public and possibly be volunteered as somebody's babysitter ever again. This is crazy to me. This entitled Karen was ready to have some stranger babysit their child. I mean, how bad of a parent do you have to be to insinuate that anything like that would be okay for your kid? And this guy had it right. This kid could have seriously gotten hurt or worse. And the last thing you need is for you to be liable for that, all because you said yes to some weird entitled Karen. So good for the original poster for denying this entitled Karen right from the get-go, because otherwise this really could have been bad. My best friend is in love with me, and I don't know how to deal with this situation. I've known my friend John since we were kids, all the way back until kindergarten. We weren't always close, but through the years, he has become someone I love and care for deeply. He is just one of the best people I've ever had the chance to meet, and I value his friendship. The first time he confessed that he liked me was in senior year in high school, which was about 5 years ago. I was messed up, and I was pining for someone else at the time, and he knew this, and I felt so bad that I couldn't reciprocate how he felt. I even cried over the situation at the time. He just hugged me and said it wasn't a big deal, and that he knew I didn't like him that way, but that he just wanted me to know. After that, we went to different colleges, but still talked and would meet up from time to time, sometimes alone, sometimes with our friends. I heard he had crushes in college, and even got himself some girlfriends through the years, and I was happy for him. I was happy that he moved on and that I had my friends back. The second time he confessed was 2 years ago. I was moving on from a previous relationship, which was my first one, so he again told me that he loved me, and that he just wanted me to know and didn't expect me to like him back. We still talked and went out, and he said he liked hanging out with me, and that he didn't need space as he knew my position, and I believed him. Again, I heard through mutual friends that he went out with other girls, so I assumed it was just a passing thing. Then, last year, he decided to hit the gym. He started a new diet, got a job, and just overall improved himself. He told me he decided he was going to challenge himself and go after the things he wanted. I was happy for him and really proud. That is, until I realized that I was a part of this challenge. He started courting me, like properly. He said that he wasn't, and that he was only being a good best friend, but he started buying me flowers just because he wanted to, and asked me to hang out alone on a weekly basis. I couldn't text him things like what I was craving at the time food-wise, because he would actually get me whatever I was talking about, and he would personally deliver it to me despite the fact that I live nowhere near him. I couldn't call him my bestie, or send him memes that said friend in it without him pouting. And again, just like before, he confessed how he feels, but this time he said that he loves me. He said it's been years, and even his past girlfriends and other situations, never made him feel like he does when he's around me. I told him again that I didn't like him that way and that maybe we should distance ourselves for a while as I wasn't comfortable anymore. I wanted a friend and not a suitor. Thankfully, he agreed. We didn't talk for about 6 months and he actually blocked me on everything for a while. I missed him, but I also knew it was the right thing. We got to talk about a month ago and he basically said that all these months with no contact were for nothing and that he still felt the same way about me, which is just honestly baffling to me. He also said that because the no contact didn't really work, that there's no reason for us to keep talking to each other and hanging out like we used to. He swears up and down that he really doesn't care if I don't like him that way, that he's absolutely fine and at peace with it, but he just can't help himself to treat me special in the way that he does because he wants me to make me happy and to spoil me, and that I should just let him do it because I can't change the way he feels, so I shouldn't want to change the way he acts. But I'm not comfortable with this, and I don't think it's healthy. I feel like I need to censor myself in the way I talk and treat him because I don't want to give him false hope. Several times in the past, I've tried to see him that way, and he is a really good person and a good catch, and anyone would be lucky to have him, and he definitely knows how to charm a girl, but I just don't feel that way. He's like family to me, not a boyfriend. Part of me believes that he doesn't actually care, and that I should just enjoy my time with him because if 6 months of no contact doesn't help the situation, then nothing is going to. But on the other side of this, I am terrified of hurting him, and I already know that I'm hurting him by not reciprocating how he feels, but if he can't change the way he feels, then neither can I. My question basically is there anything that I can do to save the friendship? I honestly don't want to lose him, but I'm not sure what to do. The way your supposed friend is acting is really creepy in my opinion. He is obviously not respecting your boundaries of you saying, hey, I don't like you like that. He's clearly madly in love with you and he wants to try and take this relationship further. In fact, he proved this by trying to make you a part of his weird challenge to improve himself. Like, sure, improve your body, your health, your job, whatever, but don't drag someone else into that as if there's some kind of prize to be won. That's really disrespectful in my opinion. This will never be any kind of true friendship. It's very much going to be one-sided, and he's obviously in love with you and you just don't feel the same way about it. And no matter how hard you try and explain it to him, it doesn't sound like he wants to change. So in my opinion, I think it's time for you two to part ways. There's no point in trying to keep him around as a friend if he's going to be disrespectful to your boundaries and completely ignore your wishes. And your wishes are simply that you don't like him like that, and that you don't want to be spoiled or treated differently, but that you just want to be a friend. And he does not want that. So in my opinion, that's your answer for this situation. Because otherwise, this behavior is only going to continue, as it looks like this guy simply does not get the message. Am I allowed to feel emotionally cheated on after what my boyfriend did? My boyfriend of almost 5 years and I have been through a lot of rough patches, and we promised each other to work on ourselves by going to therapy to make our relationship healthier and lasting. Recently, my boyfriend started going into the office to work and met a girl from a different department who actually recruited him into the company. When he told me this, I was so happy and encouraged them to be friends and to let me know all about her role since I'm in the same industry as her. Ever since then, my boyfriend has come home late without notice from being out drinking with coworkers, including her. He also mentioned that they're close friends, even though they've only known each other for 3 days, and looked her up on the company directory to find her socials and to follow her on Instagram. The first night he was home late, I expressed my concern for his safety as our city is getting more unsafe each day downtown, and he apologized for not letting me know where he was and when he'd come home, which is no big issue for me. But the next day he did the same thing and was out until 1 in the morning without notice. He even turned off his phone and tried to claim that it shut off so I wouldn't be able to reach him. Being a person with anxiety, I spiraled into a panic attack, thinking about the worst case scenario about his safety. Eventually, he did finally respond to my call while he was drunk and slurring his words that he took an Uber to a different town to continue hanging out with his 3 coworkers in this girl's building. In fact, he hid in the bathroom just to pick up his phone. My gut feeling instantly kicked in as I didn't trust what he was doing or saying. I asked for some proof to please show me that he was with more than just her, just to ease my anxiety. But when I asked this simple request, he refused. Later, when he came home, he refused to tell me about their relationship and went home after I broke up with him. The next day, I found out he called her immediately after breaking up with me, and he told her that she's a great thing that happened to him. I also found out he canceled his meetings to have lunch with her at the office. And when I requested to see this, at first he refused to show me, claiming that he had nothing to hide, even though that's exactly what he did. I feel betrayed, angry, heartbroken, and stupid for trusting him. I feel emotionally cheated on. For context, he's been cheated on twice in the past, so I didn't expect expect this from him? Am I the jerk for breaking things off and believing I was emotionally cheated on? He will admit to it and then take it back just to call me crazy. I also found out that he kept in touch as well as emailed back and forth with a former friend of his about getting back together while in a previous relationship, which makes me lose even more respect for him. I would also like to point out that I have no hard feelings towards his friend and coworker, and even reached out to her to let her know this, but I do have a problem with him. What should I do? This is a terrible situation because the boyfriend blatantly cheated on his girlfriend. There's no ambiguity here. He was straight up cheating. He would even admit it and then take it back just to call her crazy. These are all manipulation tactics if you ask me. He is the jerk in this situation. He was unfaithful, and if he could have gotten away with it, you better believe he would have hidden this from you. So I honestly don't blame you for preemptively breaking up with him, and you are truly going to be so much better without him. You are quite literally dropping the garbage off at the corner, and you can move on with confidence and happiness. Imagine staying with someone like that while they're cheating on you. Like you completely made the right choice in this situation. So give it a few weeks or even a few months, and eventually I think you'll be able to see that it really is for the best that you get away from this dirtbag, because you deserve so much better than this. I saw something very sketchy on my girlfriend's phone, and now I'm not sure how to feel about it. My girlfriend and I have been seeing each other for about 8 months. I was about a year out of a 10-year relationship when we met, and she had been single for 6 years. So we both have been playing the Tinder game, and we've both spent a lot of quality time with a bunch of other people before we met, which I understand and I'm not mad about. But we had a bit of an argument a few months ago about one of the people that I had spent some quality time with and how they were asking to hang out or go to lunch or just to walk her dog. My girlfriend wasn't comfortable with that, so I deleted that person's contacts and I haven't spoken to her since. This will be important later. So I was lying in bed this morning while my girlfriend was letting the dog out, and for some reason I had the urge to check her phone. Now I have never done that before, and I had trusted her completely until that point. I go to her Snapchat and the very first message is from a guy. I can't see his message, but her reply from yesterday basically says that she's still at work. And at this point, I'm just curious as to what's going on. So I scroll up and I see saved messages from January, which is a week before we met. And these messages are very explicit. But personally, I'm not mad about that, as I know it was before we met. But I just feel that after she blew up at me for talking to the girl I used to spend some time with, and after I respected her feelings and deleted that person forever and cut off all communication, I now feel very hurt and I feel like I've been lied to. She's told me before about getting messages from guys she used to see about getting together, but she tells them that she has a boyfriend now. But she's never mentioned getting messages off of this guy before. This is completely new territory for me. I do love her and I trust her, and I don't think she spent any quality time with anybody ever since we've gotten together. But seeing that on Snapchat has put doubt in my mind. I don't want to end things. And she's explained over and over that they were friends for 6 years before they ever spent quality time together. When I asked what the difference was between her situation and mine, she basically said it's because I met this girl off of an app, whereas the person that she was talking to was already a friend that she had known. And it's someone that she's known for quite a long time in her life. I do trust her and I love her, but I can't help but feeling really hurt right now. What should I do? It sounds like your girlfriend's trying to have some kind of weird double standard. If you can't talk to any other person from your past, then honestly, I don't think she should be allowed to either. It sounds like this is some kind of weird friends with benefit thing that she's clearly been hiding from you, and it's only just now coming to light, which in my opinion is a deal breaker, because that shows that she is not loyal to you at all, and this is not someone that you would want to spend the rest of your life with. I would not be able to trust anybody who would do that to me. So for me personally, there's no way I would let this relationship continue. And the worst part about it is, she probably knows that this is absolutely a double standard, because she's obviously being a hypocrite at this point. So I think you need to have a very serious conversation with her about where you see this relationship going, because otherwise this is just going to cause a bigger rift between the two of you. And if that's the case, I really don't see this relationship working out. My older brother sees us as rivals, but I simply don't see it that way, and now I don't know what to do. My relationship with my older brother feels less friendly and supportive than it used to. Our dynamic now is like a competitive sibling rivalry that I never even wanted. We've got each other's back at the end of the day, but I've always been closer to my younger brother, who is good-humored and less of a dominant personality. For most of our lives, we had the same level of education and job status. Things got weird when I cashed in my GI Bill education benefits to go to grad school. When I invited my brothers to graduation, my little brother was happy and excited for the ceremony, but I was surprised and disappointed when my big brother said he wasn't interested in coming. Basically, I had to beg him just to convince him to attend. He literally said the only ceremony worth attending attending is a Navy SEAL graduation, which, sorry bro, but I'm not a Navy SEAL. Keep in mind, I attended his last graduation ceremony. Afterward, I studied for an important exam, and I needed to pass this to get a job. At the time, I left a job to solely focus on studying. My big brother nagged me for not working while I studied, and called me a bum. Ultimately, I passed the exam, and got a job that is considered higher status than his own. He's been somewhat weird about the new career, but nothing I can really disarm. My big brother also acted weird when I got a car that's newer and nicer than his. He's more disagreeable too now, and goes out of his way to highlight areas of his life that are more ideal than mine. Based on the timing of his behavior, it seems my success is making my big brother feel less important, or overall just inadequate. As a result, he treats me with less warmth and encouragement than I enjoyed in the past. To me, competitive people are typically insecure. They don't feel good enough, which manifests itself in the competitive persona. It's really just upsetting that he can't just be happy for me, which my little brother does instinctively. How do I undo this unwanted rivalry and return to our old friendly brotherhood? What's the best way to convey that I've noticed this to my big brother and that I want him to make some kind of improvement? What should I do? The first thing I realized when reading through this is that you can't undo what's in other people's heads. Because I think you have it right. People who act ultra competitive, well beyond what's appropriate, typically are very insecure people. I mean, think about it for a second. You have a better job than him now. You have a better car. You made the right decisions with studying instead of working. All of this just so you could pass that exam. And he took shots at you all along the way. He made it a point to try and put you down and make you feel like you're less than him, which is a really toxic thing to do no matter who you are. But it especially stings when it comes from someone who you love, especially from a brother. So unfortunately, I don't think there's anything you can do to force him to change his mind. I think if anything, you could talk to him and explain to him in a very neutral and calm voice that you feel like your relationship with him is straining and that you two are drifting apart. I think that's a fair thing to discuss with your sibling, especially if you want to try and keep the peace over the years. I've personally always adopted the attitude that other people's success is not my failure. So if someone gets a better job than me, that doesn't mean that I failed. It sounds like your brother's really comparing himself to you, so his way of kind of evening the playing field is by putting you down and making these snide remarks. So I think if anything, I would just control how you react to those situations and just not let him get to you. But hopefully he's at least willing to hear you out and see that this is really becoming a problem, because this is your brother after all. And obviously you want to have some kind of long-lasting relationship with someone you know you should be able to trust. My parents want to give me and my husband their home, but my husband refuses and gets upset when I bring up the idea. And at this point, I don't know what to do. My husband and I have been married for 8 years and have a little one and a home together. We both want a bigger house and have been looking for one for quite a while. In the meantime, my parents have offered to downsize and trade homes with us. Their home, which is my childhood home, is much bigger than ours. It's also on the water and has a decent school district, and it's worth about double our home. My husband, though, refuses to remotely even consider this option. The reason he cites as to why my parents' house is unacceptable is because it's my home and will never be our home. My parents have offered to allow us to indicate any changes we want done, and they will pay for the renovations so it can be ready for us to simply move into. The house we live in, I bought before we were married and have paid off on my own. And to be honest, I'm very proud of this. I'm a school teacher who also runs kid camps during the summer. My husband works at a packaging company, and he makes about half of what I make from my two jobs together. So here's where the main issue comes into play. Since my parents' house is off the table, we will now have to find and buy another house out of pocket. The housing market here has gone up a lot, and interest rates have gone up a lot too. So instead of being debt-free, we get to needlessly take on a new mortgage. I enjoy my summer job, but at the same time, as our kiddos get older, I might not want to work as much as I used to. Having a new mortgage puts me in a position where I feel that I will have to work a lot. If I bring up any of this to my husband, he completely shuts down and gets very frustrated with me. He always cites money doesn't mean anything to him, and having a family home is number one. I am so frustrated with this because I feel like I am the only realistic one in this family. I understand where he is coming from, but sometimes we have to do things we don't like in order to do what is best. And then I get stuck in my own logic, thinking that maybe he is right, and I need to do what is best by finding our own home and not my childhood home. What do I do? Do I press the issue for taking my parents' house, which he will never agree to, and if he does accept the house, he will just resent the house and me as a result? Or do I just go with getting a new house and dealing with the debt that will come along with it? I am trying not to be down on this, this, but I am stuck seeing things in my light. This is all very frustrating and I honestly don't know what to do. In my opinion, based on what you've described, your husband is being very selfish. I don't know what he's talking about when he says that this wouldn't be our home. Like, of course it would be your home. Who cares if your wife grew up in it? You have a free home on your hands. There would literally be no debt associated with it, and you could make that house your own. You could do whatever you want with it. You could tear down the walls and paint the entire thing neon green if you wanted to. Like, who cares? This guy would rather take on hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, all because he's too prideful to take another person's home. Like, his logic literally does not make any sense to me. So in my opinion, this original poster is 100% in the right. Like, it only makes sense with the budget and the finances that they have to quite literally switch homes with her parents. Like, if somebody came to me and said, hey, I'll take your apartment and you take my house. By the way, we'll renovate it for you. I would jump at that tomorrow. There's no way I would say no to that, especially with all of the perks that are being described by this original poster. This is an easy decision, and there's no reason why you can't just take this house and then use it as leverage to sell it and buy another house. Like, why wouldn't your husband see this as a stepping stone to getting a house that he could call his own? This could be so beneficial to both of your portfolios. So hopefully this situation works out, because there's no good reason, in my opinion, to not take this deal, as it literally is only going to benefit him and his family. My entitled mother steals my make-a-wish moment by forcing me to do what she wants instead of what I want. And to this day, I'm still upset with her about what she did. Here's what happened. So today, I am 13 years in remission from cancer. I had a very aggressive type with less than 20% chance of survival for the first 5 years. As I was 16, I qualified for Make-A-Wish. I'd played around with a bunch of potential ideas, as well as some destination vacations, meeting my favorite band, getting electronics, all kinds of things were on the table. Once the idea of traveling somewhere warm came up, my entitled mother was convinced that was what was going to happen for my wish. The discussion of Barbados came up, so that's what she set her mind to. However, I was still on the fence, and after discussing it with my correspondent at Make-A-Wish, I wanted to meet my favorite band instead of going to Barbados. We would not have been able to go to the Caribbean for the trip simply because of the costs, but we still could have gone somewhere warm and out of the country. For context, we live in northern Canada, and the winter times are still very, very cold. There was talks of Florida, California, or even Hawaii as a destination to meet them at. I even wrote a letter directly to this band, explaining how listening to them helped me through my treatments, explaining how one song in particular was really special to me, and my correspondent had mailed it out to the managers, and they were going to begin preparations for the band to get time scheduled for the wish. When I told my mom what I wanted and the plans to meet the band, she went nuts. She went off about how she deserved this trip as much as I do because she was there for me the entire time, and that if I wanted to do anything besides going to Barbados, I could find another adult to supervise the trip because neither her nor my stepdad would be joining me, all because it wasn't what she wanted. She then told me to pack my bags and that I would be staying at my dad's place until I came to my senses, and told my Make-A-Wish correspondent that we were going to Barbados. So as a result, I spent over a month at my dad's house. Meanwhile, the correspondent was trying to convince me to go through with what I really wanted, all during this time period when I'm forced to live with my dad. But as a teenager, I eventually caved, and I let my mom have what she wanted. Now, my parents did make a compromise with me at the time, and told me that they would drive me to their concert in Toronto if I had paid for the entire trip. And foolish 17-year-old me thought it was a great idea. I get to see the band in concert, and my parents get to be happy in the end with their trip. When it came time to see this band in concert, it cost a lot of money. My parents complained the entire time, but you know what? At least I got to see them in concert. On the occasional time where the conversation of the trip to Barbados comes up, my mom likes to paint herself as the victim after all these years. She would say stuff like, "Could you imagine if you'd gone through with it and we'd missed out on going to Barbados? You would have gone with somebody else and left us behind. I would have never forgiven you if you'd done that." To this day, I am still a huge fan of that band. They were on a hiatus for a while, but came back, and this whole situation really stuck in my mind, especially when I see them performing on shows and their 2 tours they've done post-hiatus. Yes, I saw them in concert, and it was a great time, but I could have physically met them and gone to the concert through Make-A-Wish while traveling to another country, all without having to pay out of pocket for the experience. And this is all because my mom felt entitled to making my wish about her, rather than the actual recipient of it. I understand that she didn't care to meet the band herself, but there could have been many opportunities available aside from just doing that. I nearly didn't make it during treatments. It should have never been a question of whether or not we're going to do what I want for my wish, especially with the extremely high chance that my cancer could come back. The mom in this story is unbelievably toxic and just cruel. The future of their child is literally on the line, and she can only think about going to Barbados for some kind of vacation. And this is all in spite of their kid. I mean, how could you do that to somebody? I'm actually baffled by this story. The fact that she hijacked your Make-A-Wish situation is all the evidence you would ever need to know that this lady is a terrible person. She prioritized her own happiness and what she wanted over what her kid absolutely deserved. The original poster's days were numbered. They very easily could have passed away from this, but the mom was only thinking about herself. Absolutely disgusting. I truly hope that the original poster has distanced themselves from this mom, because she's absolutely crazy and there's no way I would ever want anyone like that in my life ever again, especially if they hijacked my Make-A-Wish moment. Leave a comment down below. What would you do if you were in this situation? Would you have gone through with your plans to see your favorite band and get to meet them in person? Or would you have given in to your mom's weird demands to go to Barbados? Let us know down below. An entitled customer demands that we break the law just for him, even though my supervisor stepped in and told him no. A few years ago, I was working a late shift at another store. I was supposed to leave at 9, but was asked if I could manage to stay till 10. I wasn't happy about the last minute change, but I lived really close by, so it was no skin off my nose. I just texted my sibling that I was staying till 10, and that was that. Inside the store, it was pretty slow, and I was very tired, but we did have a few last minute stragglers around 9:30 coming in for some drinks or whatever. I was about to close my lane when my coworker who was closing asked me to hang on for just a minute while they ran to the bathroom, which is no problem. I took a few more quick beer runners in about 3 minutes and finished checking out the last guy just before the announcement played at 10 o'clock that no more beer could be sold for that night. I was again about to close my register when my coworker came back. I had shut my light off and was finishing my cleanup as the entitled customer of this story strolled right up to my register with a case of beer and a few other items. And once he showed up, I just knew it was going to be problems. I looked at the beer and I said to him, "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't sell you the beer." This guy looked up at me and he did not look happy. He said, "Why not?" I told him that it's 10 o'clock p.m. and I wasn't allowed to. Then he literally lifted up his wrist and pointed at his analog watch. And according to his watch, it's not quite 10 o'clock yet. I still repeated myself and said, "I'm sorry, but I legally cannot sell it to you. It's against the law and my system won't let me do it." The supervisor who was there for closing that night came up to help me at this point because they already knew I was supposed to be punching out by now. So the supervisor stepped in and said, "Sir, what's the problem?" The entitled customer started complaining. "I want my beer and they won't give it to me. My watch says it's 9:58, so give me my beer." Thankfully, my supervisor had a backbone because they said, "Sorry, sir, it doesn't work that way. I'll be happy to check out the rest of your items, but we can't sell you beer at this time." The customer kept arguing with him for a bit, and by the time I was clocked out and heading out the door, he was already gone. I found out from the supervisor the next day that the entitled customer refused to buy anything from us, as he claimed that we were just a bunch of scam artists, and that he was going to take his business to the convenience store across the street. So in protest for being a few minutes too late to legally purchase alcohol, he went to that store that charged him way more than our store would have. Instead of dropping maybe less than $10 for a late night run, he spent at least $20. But at the end of the day, I guess you really can't fix stupid. But hopefully he'll be able to fix the time on his discount watch he probably got from the dollar store. So I looked into this, and apparently according to the original poster, they didn't do this for some kind of power trip. They weren't just being stubborn or weird or anything. In their system itself, a notification will pop up rejecting the sale if you're trying to sell alcohol past 10 o'clock. They literally would not have been able to even sell it to him if they wanted to. And apparently it's the law. You can't sell alcohol past 10 where they live. And if the original poster and the supervisor did break this law, they would be in a lot of trouble. So I don't blame them for saying, you know what, it's not worth risking it. Sure, they probably could have taken a cash payment of some kind, but then when that gets accounted for during some kind of audit or some kind of accounting system, you're gonna be in deep trouble. And that's not gonna be good for you or anybody else's job. I'm a firm believer that, you know what, the customer is not right sometimes. Sometimes they're just blatantly wrong. And after spending most of my life in customer service, I would say that very rarely is the customer right. Most times they're just a bunch of idiots. And the entitled customer in this story definitely fits the bill. I have just cheated cheated on my girlfriend, and I'm not sure what to do now. I'm a 23-year-old male, and my girlfriend and I have been together for 5 years, and we met each other through her best friend. I met my girlfriend through a mutual friend who I play in a band with. It's complicated because at the time I had a crush on her, and I didn't get with my now girlfriend initially for the right reasons. At the time, it was more to make my crush jealous, but eventually I grew out of that and we actually built a really good relationship. A couple of years ago, I got a really nice house and we live together now, and I've been thinking about having kids and raising a family. The problem is my relationship with her friend has grown closer over time, and I've realized I never really stopped wanting to be with her. I love my girlfriend, but I am very torn. My girlfriend went to Australia last Friday to go and see her parents, and she won't be back for another week. Meanwhile, me and her friend were playing, and she said that she felt tired after the show. She lives a lot further away from the venue than I do, so I told her she could come and stay over at my place for the night. Anyway, as one can imagine, we kissed, and then one thing led to another. I won't pretend I didn't have the possibility in mind when I invited her over, and I think she had the same intention too. And with that, we spent some quality time together, and yes, it was a mistake. We both decided in the morning after we shouldn't have done that and agreed we won't ever do that again. I shouldn't have betrayed my girlfriend, especially when we're planning for kids. And trust me, I feel sick about that. I have mixed emotions right now because I love my girlfriend, but I can't pretend I don't love her friend as well. After all, we were close friends even way before I met my girlfriend. I don't know what to do exactly. I'm glad she agrees we shouldn't have done it, but I'm worried something like that could happen again. What should I do? The original poster in this story, in my opinion, is a massive jerk. You have essentially destroyed your relationship. All 5 of those years are now meaningless because you cheated on your girlfriend. And when she finds out, she's now not only going to have no boyfriend, but also her best friend is going to be gone as well. You have ruined her life in so many ways. She was planning on marrying you and having kids, but you've now just thrown that to the wayside. You basically said, nah, I don't know what I want. I'm torn between 2 different women. You don't actually care about your girlfriend in my opinion, but you instead betrayed her trust. And that's just not okay. She deserves way better than you. So when you ask the question, what should I do? You should be breaking up with your girlfriend and apologizing profusely. You need to explain to her exactly what happened in vivid detail, just so she can know not to go after someone like you ever again. Tell her what happened, break up with her, let her go through the grieving process, and allow her to move on from you. The original poster even went on to say that if they're brutally honest, they want to be with her friend, and that he would even break up with his girlfriend to be with her, which is just so toxic and disgusting. So hopefully you do the right thing. And honestly, I hope it was worth ruining your relationship, because that's exactly what you just did. I ruined my wedding by uninviting my groomsmen, and now I'm not sure what to do. 2 weeks ago, I had my bachelor's party. I was very hesitant about having one in the first place, mainly because I don't like the connotation and expectations that surround this type of party. My best man and all my groomsmen knew this. We've known each other for a long time, ever since childhood, so we're all super close. Before I met my fiance, I was not a good person. I can readily admit that. I would manipulate and use women in all kinds of ways all the time, and I thought it was cool and fun. And this all stemmed from unresolved trauma from my childhood. But that's no good excuse. When I graduated from college, I started taking care of myself, physically, emotionally, and most importantly, mentally. I was able to afford therapy and really worked hard on myself to change and become a better man. My best man knew about this and has followed my journey and has been generally very supportive. He too has started to see how toxic our behavior was and is basically more or less on the same path to becoming a better person as I am. Our other friends are not so much on that path, but it's not something that affects our friendship, and they are much better with their behavior in comparison to when we were younger. I met my fiance shortly after the changes I made. My fiance really helped me heal from my trauma and has embraced me with all of my flaws. I feel so loved and cared for, and she's the one I want to spend the rest of my life with. Not to mention that her family has welcomed me since day one. I've even opened up to her about everything. She knows about my past, and she's well aware of my friend group and how they are. She ended up actually encouraging me to have a bachelor party. Also, I wouldn't miss out on this once-in-a-lifetime experience. So we went ahead and had the bachelor's party, but I told the boys ahead of time that I didn't want anything nefarious to be going on during this party, if you know what I mean. They agreed and understood where I was coming from, so we all went to a hotel with a casino and gambled for most of the afternoon. In the evening, we went back to our room and drank some more, and by the time it was 8 to 9 o'clock p.m., I was completely wasted. And this is where things took a turn for the worse. My groomsmen were talking to a group of girls when we were gambling in the afternoon who were also doing a bachelorette party. They invited them to our room and they showed up at 9 o'clock. So when they showed up, things got crazy. We all went to a club, at which point I pretty much blacked out. I remember telling my best man to take me back and that I didn't feel good about being this drunk at a club, but instead of helping me, he sort of just shrugged at me and laughed it off. Next thing I remember is coming in and out of consciousness while one of the bridesmaids is in our hotel room. I tried to push her away but kept blacking out. When I woke up the next morning, I was back in our hotel room. I thought I had a terrible nightmare, but I slowly started remembering everything. I began to have a panic attack. I woke everyone up and I tried to find out what happened. My groomsmen were being very dismissive and not taking it seriously, but I pressed until one of them admitted that they thought it would be funny to convince one of the bridesmaids to take me back to her room and give me one more night of fun before I became trapped in my marriage. And at this point, I completely lost it and I freaked out. I left without them and I've been staying with my cousin until I figure out what to do next. I called my fiance and I told her I need to postpone the wedding and that I need time to think. The boys and my fiance have been blowing up my phone at this point, and I've only been responding to my fiance and reassuring her that it's not her, it's something with me. I sent one text 1 week later to my boys' group chat, telling them that they are all uninvited. I obviously told my fiance about this, but didn't explain why. She, her family, and all the relatives of my friends have been calling me a complete jerk and blowing up my phone nonstop about the issue. The only people that know what happened are me, the boys, and my cousin. I don't have any other family, and my best man said he had no idea what they were up to and feels like garbage for not being there to stop it and protect me. I feel so lost. I haven't slept for days. I can't eat, I can't think, I can't even breathe. I can't even look my fiance in the face. I keep making excuses about why I'm staying with my cousin, with my only explanation being that I'm working through something. I feel sick every time I text her because I cheated, even though I didn't want it. It feels like I regressed with all of my history. I can't trust myself anymore, and I don't know how to explain this to my fiance. What should I do? First off, I don't think you're in the wrong here. You are clearly in a state of vulnerability, and your friends are absolute pieces of garbage. You said no. You said you did not want to be around this lady, but she kept pursuing you and did not let up, and that's not okay. Nor is that your fault. You are in a vulnerable state, and it's just not fair. So I think you need to explain all of that to your fiance sooner than later. And as for uninviting all of your friends to the wedding, I don't blame you. They completely disregarded your boundaries and everything you said related towards your bachelor's party. You didn't want anything nefarious going on, if you know what I mean. And for something like that to be encouraged all because they think it's a joke is just not okay. And let me make it very clear, you did not cheat. You were instead absolutely assaulted. This is not your fault. You need to understand that. And I'm sure your fiance is going to see that as well. She deserves to know above anyone else why you want to postpone the wedding. And I can bet that she's going to be on your side when it comes to grieving this situation. I personally would not worry about what anyone else has to say because you know what? It's not their wedding. This is your wedding and you want to do this correctly. And you want the right people there to support you. And every single one of those groomsmen, in my opinion, have no place at your wedding. My boyfriend's best friend just told me that he has a crush on me, and now I don't know what to do. So my boyfriend and I have been together for about a year. Last night we were all hanging out drinking. It was my boyfriend and I, as well as 5 or 6 of his friends. I get along great with my boyfriend's friends, and we probably hang out as a group once every other week, sometimes once a week altogether. Anyways, the friend in question is a super nice guy. We like the same music and have the same dark sense of humor. I consider him a friend, and that's it. At one point, after several drinks, he came up to me and asked to speak with me in private. He told me my boyfriend was a jerk and that I should dump him. I asked why he would say this about his friend, and he couldn't tell me why. My boyfriend had some quirks that aren't my favorite characteristics of him, but all things considered, they are very minor issues, and we've talked about it before. I can only assume this is what the friend was referring to. I very kindly brought the conversation to an end, and we went back to the group and hardly spoke the rest of the night. To be honest, I was a little hurt by this. Later that night, he texted me and said that he had a crush on me and told me to leave my boyfriend again. When he was sober, he said he was sorry and that he was just drunk and he didn't mean it. I didn't respond, and I'm feeling a lot of things right now. I'm angry at myself because I genuinely don't know if I did something to suggest I was into him. I don't know if I led him on somehow by accident or something like that. I am very much not interested in him, but do value our friendship. That is, up until now. I'm not sure how to go about this. this? Should I tell my boyfriend about what happened, as well as the text messages that I received? I don't want to turn them against each other, but I feel like it would be disloyal to my boyfriend to not tell him. What if he were to find out about this from somebody else? I don't want him to think that I'm hiding it from him. I'm worried how he will react as well. I've decided to go no contact with this individual and low contact in group settings with the friend for the time being. But if there are any better ways to tackle this, I am open to suggestions. What should I do? I gotta be honest, if I was in your situation, I would 100% tell your boyfriend about this. Think about it for a second. This guy is saying that you should break up with your boyfriend just so you can get with him. I don't care if he was drunk or not. That's so inappropriate. If I was your boyfriend, I would want to know if some guy was coming onto my girlfriend. It doesn't matter if there's going to be some kind of upheaval in the group. This needs to be known. Just ignoring it and saying, oh, maybe if I just put it off, this will probably solve itself, is legitimately only going to cause more problems. Your boyfriend deserves to know about his supposed friend trying to actively sabotage his relationship with you, because hiding that just to spare his feelings is only going to cause problems. Like, this guy is not your friend. He does not have your best interest in mind, nor does he have your boyfriend's best interest in mind. I mean, flip the script for a second. If some girl came up to your boyfriend and said that he should break up with you just so he could get with her, don't you think you would be just a little bit upset about the situation? So personally, if I was in your situation, I would get everything together, I would take screenshots of that conversation, and I would be prepared to share this with my boyfriend, because he deserves to know, and he has every right to know, which one of his friends is actively trying to sabotage his relationship. Because honestly, anything less than telling him is going to cause some major problems later down the line. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And the next time you live stream, use the cream of the crop music. Search Cream of the Stream on Spotify or whatever platform you use for copyright-free music to use for your next stream. An entitled Karen threatens to get me fired over a broken coffee mug that wasn't even hers to begin with. Here's what happened. For context, we go back to the year 2017. I was working at a popular coffee shop known for dunking donuts in coffee, if you know what I mean. On that particular day, I had been working the cash register, and that's when the entitled Karen walked through the door. At first, she seemed really pleasant, but then she started asking about a coffee mug she had purchased that had become fractured and started to leak. I asked her if she had the receipt, but she said that she didn't. So I told her that unfortunately, we cannot issue a refund or an exchange without the receipt. But this entitled Karen was not having it, and just about loses her mind over the situation. She then says,
"What? What do you mean you can't? I got it here. Can't you just look it up or something?"
For future context, she didn't even buy it there. She bought it at a different location, but we didn't know that until later. I said, "Ma'am, I would not even know where to begin with that." And unfortunately, my manager has left for the day. She then says,
"Well, can't you just give it to me and take this mug back?"
She then shows me the broken mug. I say, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I cannot do that. There's nothing I can do." This conversation went back and forth on repeat for about 5 minutes, with this entitled Karen getting more and more upset and irate as time went on. Eventually, she settled on coming back when the manager was in. Now, at this point, you might be thinking that this entitled Karen would just come back the next day and explain this to the manager. In fact, you're probably thinking that this is the entitled Karen of the story. But no, we have to go beyond the average entitled Karen, because in walks about 2 hours later, another lady who seems to be a little bit older with cheap-looking blonde hair and a very nasty expression. This lady was the super entitled Karen. I started to give her the standard greeting when she had cut me off by slamming her palms on the counter. As she slams the counter, she gets her head a little closer to me. Then she starts off in a low whisper.
"I want to speak to the person who would not give my friend a new mug. Was that you?"
Now, unfortunately, it really was me. So I answered yes, and boy, do I wish I hadn't. I looked at her and said, "I believe so, yes, what can I do for you?" This super entitled Karen continued to whisper, but now started shaking her head up and down with each word, trying to get me to agree.
"You are going to give my friend a new mug and then give her an apology. Do you understand?"
At this point, I really did want to cuss her out, but I wanted to remain professional. So I said, "Ma'am, I apologize that you and your friend are upset about this, but there's nothing I can do." At this point, she did not answer, but the second I said that, she yelled at the top of her lungs,
"You will give me a new mug or so help me God."
She then slams her palms down on the counter again. After she did that, I was incredibly startled, and I was kind of starting to shake a little bit. I have PTSD from a violent upbringing, so things like this immediately get my adrenaline pumping. I would normally get defensive, but lots of therapy helped me get this under control. I said, "Ma'am, please calm down. There is truly nothing I can do in this situation. I told your friend the same thing. The manager will be in tomorrow if you wish to talk to him." But this super entitled Karen was not having it, as she continued to berate me just a little bit more. Then she screamed about wanting the manager's personal number to talk to him. I told her that I couldn't do that either, and I won't lie, I started to smile watching her tantrum. She insisted that I give her the mug for being so rude and unaccommodating, stating that this was ridiculous and how dare I not give her what she wants. She finally settled on taking the store's number and leaving, but not before turning around and delivering some weird, ominous prophecy towards me.
"You are going to be so screwed when I call tomorrow. Better be ready to find a new job. Tomorrow I will be back for that mug and your head."
And with that, this super entitled Karen left the store, leaving me reeling over the situation. Now, I hate to say it, with all things considered, but my manager was a pushover, because in the end, he did end up giving this friend a new mug. To top it all off, I did end up seeing this entitled Karen again, and she got really awkward when she had to place her order with me, because despite her best efforts, I guess she just really wasn't expecting me to still have a job. This is so crazy because I've dealt with people like this before. Not only both of these Karens who act incredibly entitled, but having a manager who is such a pushover. When managers just roll over and play dead and don't defend their employee, it makes everybody look bad, despite the fact that what this person was doing was probably store policy, which I can completely see being the case. But the manager just decided, oh, let's just make them happy. And as a result, basically ruined the original poster's credibility. Like they were just doing their job. It's not like they're going to hand over a mug, because I guarantee you if they did, this type of manager would be like, oh, well, that's coming out of your paycheck. Overall, though, the original poster handled this like a champion, and in the end, they got the last laugh since they still got to keep their job, even though this entitled Karen tried to get him fired. I'm concerned that my girlfriend is going to cheat on me because of her best friend, and I honestly don't know what to do. My girlfriend and I have been together since mid-2013, and in February of 2017, she broke up with me. She never told me why. She just wanted me to leave her parents' house, which is where we were living. After that happened, we would keep contact and still meet occasionally. We were the pretty jealous type of people, so we never added new people on social media like Snapchat or Facebook. Early 2018, we got back together, and all is going pretty good. That is, until I overheard my girlfriend and her best friend talking about something very serious. She came over to our place about a week ago. I was on my laptop playing games, which I do maybe once a week. I had headphones on, but not that loud. I then heard my girlfriend and her friend speaking about some guy that she is spending some quality time with, if you know what I mean. This friend also stated that she is talking to two other guys as well, stating that it just overall feels awesome. I clearly see and hear how exciting my girlfriend thinks it is. Maybe she was just excited for her friend, but then her friend starts talking about going to a foreign country and that my girlfriend should go with her. I'm not sure if this was hypothetical or if it was serious, but the way they were talking about it was really concerning. My girlfriend then gets even more excited, and I can just see it, and I can clearly hear it in her voice just how excited she is as she starts mentioning a country that she would like to go to. Then her friend starts talking about all the casual, intimate time that they could spend with someone that they don't even know, and how awesome that must be. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what on earth is going on? Because my girlfriend's friend is very innocent, she's kind of geeky, and she rarely gets attention from other guys. Even my girlfriend has told me this information, so I thought maybe my girlfriend was just excited for her or something. But that's when I see my girlfriend look over at me and lower her voice so that I won't be able to hear her with my headphones on. But she doesn't know that my headphones can pick up sound from outside with a boost button. So yes, I am listening to them. And that's when my girlfriend says something I could not believe. She says to her friend that that would be so awesome. But her friend silently clarifies by saying, "You mean us going to Europe and doing this?" And my girlfriend nods her head as she is trying to make sure I don't see or hear her. And after I saw and heard this, I was absolutely stunned. But I didn't really think I should worry until they really start to get some kind of plan going. I mean, this is all hypothetical, right? My girlfriend doesn't really like going to parties or drinking or really going anywhere without me. She wouldn't actually do this, would she? Well, yesterday, my girlfriend says that she and her friend have been talking about possibly going together in October. They had plans of possibly going for a week or so. I just brush it off and say, yeah, nice. You should go since you haven't gone anywhere for a while. Then I tell her that two of my friends friends are going next week for 4 days to Spain. I then suggest that maybe I should go with them. But when my girlfriend said this, she said, oh, maybe I shouldn't, and started to give some kind of excuse as to why she wouldn't want to go, which is really weird because she sounded very excited all the way up until the moment I said I wanted to go. And the entire time this is going on, I'm just standing there thinking about their little chat in my head and thinking that she is probably just waiting for me to tell her to go, and that she probably just wants me to give her permission to go so that the pressure of planning this can be taken off of her, which I absolutely did not do. So that begs the question, should I be worried that her friend is a bad influence on my girlfriend? Is she not nearly as innocent as I would think? My girlfriend and her never party or anything together, and hearing this from her friend and seeing how excited my girlfriend was talking about it was really concerning, and I'm genuinely shocked. What should I do? I think you need to stop playing games and tell her exactly what's going on. It sounds like you're skirting around the issue, and it's just not fair for you or your girlfriend. Like, if she wants to go to another country and basically spend quality time with everybody and anybody that she sees, then she can do that as a single woman. If I was in your shoes and I had heard all of this, I would dump her right away. The original poster goes on to say that they do have a kid together, so it makes things extra tricky. But if that's not a telling sign that she is willing to throw away her entire relationship, as well as her kid having any semblance of a family, just so she can spend some quality time with guys over in Europe, is more than enough reason, in my opinion, to kick her to the curb. You do not need that in your life, and you can do so much better than this lady. So if I were you, I would definitely start having a conversation with her. You are both in your late 20s, and it's time to grow up and think about your kid for once, because otherwise this is just going to fester. And in my opinion, it's better to clean things up now than to have some major blowout just a few months later. I don't think moving out with my boyfriend is a good idea anymore, and I'm honestly not sure what to do. My boyfriend is great. He's kind, caring, funny, and he's true to himself. We've known each other for 4 years and have been together for 6 months. However, there's a lot of growing up that he has to do, and I'm not sure if our plans to move out make sense for me anymore because of this. This wouldn't be my first time moving out of my mother's house either. The first time was terrible. I was 18 years old at the time and ended up moving in with my 31-year-old boyfriend at the time. Yes, I know how that sounds. He made my life a living nightmare. He did illegal substances all day, he cheated with other women, he quit his job, and loaded all the responsibility of the two of us surviving on me. So I guess you could say I have my reservations about going about this again. Just like my ex, my current boyfriend lacks life experience. I know that sounds strange given the fact that my last boyfriend was 31 years old, but he was a narcissist who would take the backseat in his life and allow women around him to take on things he should be responsible for. For example, the place we live, it was his ex-girlfriend's basement, which she renovated into a basement apartment. I found this out after 3 months of living there. His car, his ex-girlfriend's mother bought it for him. His car insurance, his mother set that up. His doctor's appointments, still his mom. I think at this point you get the picture. My issue is, with my current boyfriend, I see there's a lot of places in his life that he's not been proactive in, and the move is one of those things. With him though, I do understand why he's like this. He was adopted and his mom is extremely controlling. He's 23 years old and she still takes his phone away when she's mad at him. She threatens to kick him out when she knows for a fact he would literally have no place to go, and demeans him for forgetting to do little things. She has basically destroyed his confidence in himself. I love him, but I don't want to be someone else's mother again. Out of the two of us, I make the most in income. The difference in income is to the point where if we broke up, I would be fine. I would be able to pay rent and utilities on my own and save a little if I had to move. He wouldn't be able to though, and that worries me. He also doesn't know how to drive. I've asked him if he'd be willing to learn, but he said that he doesn't really want to because of anxiety. We have tried to go apartment hunting before, and his mother always seems to interfere with our plans. Because of my worries, I've asked him about his future, whether or not he'd like to find a new job one day or anything, and his response is that he'll be fine as long as he has me. I responded with, "People aren't forever. If I were to disappear suddenly, what would you do then?" He said that he'll just survive. Like, what does that even mean? With what plan? Maybe this is a sign that this will just not work out. I don't know. This also isn't the first time we've talked about moving. In our 3rd year of knowing each other, we talked about it as friends. He told me that he'd like to have me as a roommate because he trusted me, but at the time I told him I wasn't ready. But if he still needed one and the time came for it, I would be willing to move out with him. Well, fast forward and here we are right now. I still want to be with him because apart from all those things, he's great. But These are things that I really get hung up on. Should I wait and hold off on the move for another year until he's ready? I don't like the idea of putting my life on hold, but I'd rather us both have our bearings and can jointly support each other. Should I tell him that I would rather move myself and that he can come live with me when he's ready, since that option is a little bit better for me, but I don't want to offend him and make him feel like I'm abandoning him? What should I do? I think you have some legitimate concerns with moving in with this guy. He has not lived on his own and his mom is incredibly controlling. I mean, she takes away his phone and he's 23 years old. It is seriously time to grow up. His lack of life experience, especially with what you had previously with that 31-year-old boyfriend, is going to cause problems, especially based on your past. I can see it happening in such a way where he moves in with you and then all these problems are just going to start popping up. And that really is not fair for you. I think you also need to remember that this relationship is really early. You've only been together for 6 months. In my opinion, with all things considered, it does not sound like your boyfriend is responsible enough to live on his own, and I don't think he's mature enough to do it either. And I really don't blame you for avoiding being the person to educate him on this and try and help him understand how to live on his own. In my opinion, that sounds absolutely obnoxious to deal with. So hopefully he's able to understand where you're coming from, because right now he does not sound mature enough to get this going. And I think personally it would be a big mistake to move in with him this early into the relationship. I think that my father is cheating on my mother, and I don't know what to do. My father lost his mother a little more than a year ago. My father isn't one of those people that shows his emotions. Instead, he's always been the one in the family to say that things are going to be all right, as well as comforting me all throughout my life. No matter what, he's always been there, whether it's been a childhood argument with a friend or when I would reach out to him for more grown-up advice while going through college. He was legitimately always there. When we received the news, it was hard for all of us, most visibly shown by my mother, who needed my father's support to get through the first couple of days. I knew, however, that it was most likely my dad that was hurting the most. I want to start by saying that we are both very similar, my dad and I. We are introverted, often preferring the company of ourselves over the company of each other. I never saw this as an issue because I felt like we had a good understanding of each other, and if I ever wanted to talk to him, I would go to his office and he'd welcome me with open arms. Another thing I know about my dad is that he drinks. He has joked about being a functioning alcoholic, and while I have never seen this as healthy, his father is more or less the same, and it seems he's always managed, so that combined with his drinking, since I could remember, made me feel relatively indifferent about his habits. After all, it wasn't like he was showing up in the middle of the night after a night of getting drunk. He almost always drank while he was at home. Now back to his mother passing away. I noticed him drinking more since her death. He used to drink only on the weekends from what I knew, and now for about the last year, he's been drinking a lot more. He also joined our local VFW and has been drinking there a couple of nights a week, which worries me because he is driving, and also because apparently there are people there that have drinking problems themselves. In terms of this affecting his routine, he used to wake up at around 10 o'clock in the morning on weekends, and now he sleeps till the middle of the day. He cracks open a beer at 4 instead of later in the evening, and goes to bed incredibly late. He hardly eats my mom's meals on weekdays when she cooks, and snacks late at night when he's had something to drink. When asked by my mom, he always just shrugs it off, saying he simply isn't hungry. He does this with all of my mom's concerns, including his drinking problems. As I said earlier, he's not the type of person to let out his emotions. Going further, I've heard my dad throwing up before from drinking too much, both on the weekends and the weekdays. I'm pretty sure he's been running water through the sink to try and conceal it, which works pretty well, but when I hear the toilet flush while the sink is running, I'm honestly not sure what else that could mean. If any of you guys have any ideas, please feel free to share, because I am not certain on this. You may be wondering, why don't you, as his son, approach your father? I've done this before last summer, when I heard him fall down from drinking too much one night and throwing up the next. I asked if he was okay and told him I was worried about him. As expected, he shrugged this off, stating that he was fine. Despite my strong belief that he was in fact not okay, I nodded my head, knowing that no matter how hard I pressed, he still muttered the same words. I should add that my dad is one of the smartest people I know. I admire him in many ways, and he's been as good of a parent as I could have asked for. He never let his drinking get in the way of his work, and has been an all-around awesome dad, who I hope I can one day be like when I have a family of my own. As a result, I've been very hesitant to go any further than asking if he's okay, and nodding my head when he says that he is. He knows he has a problem, and who am I to tell him how he needs to live or grieve in his life? His relationship with my mother is still good, and he's been talking to his father more since his mother's death. Even with this increase in drinking, he still seems to manage work just fine. As said before, he has defined himself as a functioning alcoholic. I just worry that this recent destructive behavior will eventually get the better of him. Now to the point from the title. A few hours ago, in the middle of the night, I heard my dad on the phone talking to a woman. When I noticed the voice to be a woman, I leaned my ear to the vent. Just as a bit of context, I sleep in a bedroom right below his office. And also, at the time, he had been drinking. Infidelity is not something I ever thought that my dad would do, but the voice, combined with his drinking problem, made me very curious. A lot of what I heard, I couldn't make out. He had the woman's voice on speaker, and I couldn't hear much of anything that she said. But with my dad, I heard him say that this woman was the love of his life. He talked about how much he cared for her, and even mentioned what it was like to be close to her the first time. He also said some other things related to some personal time that you would spend with someone that you love, if you know what I mean. But I honestly couldn't discern the entirety of the sentence that he was saying, only what was being implied. This, as expected, shocked me, not just from what I heard, but from the fact that he was having this conversation so indiscreetly. Yes, he was drunk, but even still, he's not an idiot. He knows that I sleep directly below his office, and that I stay up late at nights often. He also knows that his wife sleeps directly above his office. This is what worries me the most. Does he just not care anymore? Is there something I'm missing? Yes, I'm in denial, but I just found this so hard to believe. This entire situation makes me feel like I'm having a bad dream. What should I do? It sounds like there's two different issues going on here, because it sounds like your dad is dealing with the loss of his mother by basically drinking his problems away. But on that same vein of thought, this drinking problem has most likely led him to being with another woman, which is not okay. If what you heard is correct, then yeah, your dad is cheating on your mom. But I personally would not jump to any kind of conclusion so quickly. This could mean a lot of different things, and I just think you gotta get some concrete evidence of some kind of infidelity besides what you heard in a vent. And there is a slight chance that there might be some kind of discrepancy here that you might not be aware of. So personally, I would not be the first person to go up to your dad and be like, "You're cheating on mom." I just don't think that's productive at all. To be completely honest though, it sounds like your dad really needs some professional help. It seems like this is beyond any kind of intervention or some kind of actual discussion with him, because he just brushes off the fact that he has a drinking problem. And yeah, he was probably a functioning alcoholic before his mom passed away, but based on what you've described, it's definitely escalating into something much worse, which is not fair for anybody in the family. So maybe talk to your mom about this and see what you guys can come up with to try and help him. And also, I would take notes and try and keep a lookout of any kind of suspicious behavior that would give you solid evidence that he is cheating on your mom, because the last thing you would want to do is to accuse him of something that isn't happening. An entitled Karen demands that a pregnant woman move from a special seat on a bus, claiming that this lady was lying about being pregnant just so she could get this special seat. Here's what happened. So this was 3 years ago, and I was 7 to 8 months pregnant at the time. I had 2 doctor's appointments at 2 separate hospitals. This is all due to being a high-risk pregnancy, as it's called in the UK. Because of that, I could not drive, so I had to do a lot of bus travel that day. Everyone in my family was working, and my partner was working as well, to try and save for his paternity leave. At about 8 months pregnant, my feet were swollen. I was huge. I ached, and I just wanted this to go smoothly for me. And to top it all off, it was the middle of July, so it was incredibly hot for me. So I had just had my first hospital appointment, and I was on the bus to go to my second one. On the bus I was taking, I sat down on the designated baby, mother, and elderly seats on this bus. It was pretty obvious that I was hugely pregnant, but I sit with my bag on my lap because the area I live in has a lot of elderly people who travel on the bus routes, so I didn't want to make anyone feel like they couldn't sit next to me if they needed to. I should also note that on this bus at the moment, there were 35 seats available and only 4 passengers, including myself, on the bus. There were plenty of seats for whoever got on the bus. This is going to be important later. The bus stop after I got on, an entitled Karen and her daughter got on. The Karen paid for her tickets, turned, looked straight at me, and after walking over to my seat, she seriously asked me to move. And I was in complete shock that she was really saying this to me. I told her that I'm not gonna move because I did need to stay seated. She then started to get loud and looked at the other passengers saying, "These seats at the front are for the elderly, pregnant, and people with families. I need to sit here with my daughter." I looked back at this entitled Karen and I said, "I am pregnant. I will not be getting up to walk while the bus is moving. Also, I fit the criteria. This seat is literally for me." At this point, her kid tried to chime in and told her that there's lots of seats in the back and that we could just sit back there. But the entitled Karen said, "No, this girl needs to learn respect and needs to move. She doesn't need this seat and is lying about being pregnant. You had better move right now." So I moved my bag onto the seat next to me, braced myself on the poles, and stood up, revealing my huge baby bump. I looked at her and I said, "I'm not moving one step. Now leave me alone." Now this was not a subtle pregnancy. I was massive. I was probably looking about 9 months pregnant at this point. When I stood up and yelled at this entitled Karen, all of the color drained from her face. At that moment, an older man at the back of the bus burst out laughing and started clapping. I turned to look and I saw him applauding me. I just gave a small smile, then turned to sit back down. I couldn't help but notice that the entitled Karen had walked up to the bus driver and was saying something, but I couldn't hear over the engine sounds. Eventually, the entitled Karen shouted at the top of her lungs, "Just stop this stupid bus already." When he did, they got off immediately, completely in between two bus stops on a busy national speed limit road. And they were between two different towns. They were literally around nothing. In fact, this was actually a road that went through the middle of the forest nearby. So who knows where they were gonna go or what they were gonna do in the middle of nowhere. Needless to say, I'm happy that I didn't have to give up my seat and that this entitled Karen got put in her place. This really is a great story because you know what? People like that drive me nuts. She tried to say that this lady was faking being pregnant when she literally could not look any more pregnant. How entitled and disgusting do you have to act to make someone move from a seat like that? Like, my first instinct if I were to go on a bus and I see someone sitting there is to think, oh, well, they probably need to sit there. But thankfully, this entitled Karen got put in their place. And hopefully the next time they ride the bus, they'll just take an empty seat and act like a civilized person for once in their life. An entitled Karen demands to use the employee bathroom, so I had to shut her down and tell her no. This happened at work about a week ago, and I haven't gotten in trouble for it, so I figure either the managers don't care or they agree with me. I work at Costco, where most people know we have forklifts and a lot of machinery in the back that could be very dangerous. We have those yellow do not cross belts that we hang so people know not to go in the back where the employee section is. As I'm walking into the area where the two employee bathrooms are, I hear the forklift screech to a stop and slam on the horn. I look to the side and I see a couple and their young child right in front of the driver and waving at him. I look at them and say, "Excuse me, what are you doing? This is an employee-only area, and you can be run over by a forklift." This entitled Karen looked at me and said,
"We just need to use the bathroom and we saw these."
At this point, she was pointing at the bathroom in the back. I said, "Ma'am, this is an employee bathroom. If you need to use the bathroom, you can go to the front of the store and use those. Those won't have forklifts nearby." When I said this, I was hoping that this would be enough to get her out of the back and away from the dangerous machinery. But she wasn't having it. She said,
"We are already here and we need to go."
I then put on a stern voice and I told her straight up, "You need to get out of this area. It's only for employees." Then the entitled Karen said,
"So we can't use these bathrooms?"
I looked at her straight up and I said, "No, you can't. There is heavy machinery back here. You can go to the front of the store where the normal bathrooms are." After I said this entitled Karen got incredibly angry and gave me a look while the dad just grabbed the kid and walked back the same way. My coworker driving the forklift sat there the whole time, just staring at them and watching it play out. After I walked back to my department, I told my coworkers what happened, and one asked if I let them use the bathroom, and I told them absolutely not. I'm not being paid to babysit some idiots who are obviously too dumb to know where they should and shouldn't be. Good for this employee for stepping up and saying, "No, you can't use these bathrooms," because knowing my luck, the one time I say, "Sure, go ahead and use the bathroom," is the one time they slip, fall, break their ankle, and then I get blamed and sued for some kind of negligence of some kind. When it comes down to it, you gotta follow protocol and protect your job, because some customers will try and do everything they can to wiggle past the rules just for them. And I really think the original poster is gonna be safe here. You really should not get in trouble for following company policy, as well as protecting yourself as well as the company from possible liability, because that would be an absolute nightmare to deal with. And I know if I was in their shoes, I would not want to be mixed up in that, because very quickly I would see myself in the unemployment line well before this case even gets started. My boyfriend has a best friend who's a girl, and I worry that they are getting a little too close to each other, and I don't know what to do. So I've been with my boyfriend for 7 months, and we've been friends for several years. He's been friends with this girl for about the same amount of time, although they were probably closer before we were. I've met her and I've hung out with them multiple times. She is very sweet to him, and they both try to include me sometimes when they hang out, which is why I wonder if I'm just overthinking the situation. But there are legitimate situations that make me concerned as to what's going on. For one, they text almost every day, usually throughout the day. She comes to him constantly when she's upset, as well as when she's having boy problems or when she's been drinking. The other night, she was trashed and started texting my boyfriend about all kinds of boy problems that she was currently having. They also also hang out alone most of the times they do things together, whether it be at her house or in her room, or when they're running errands together. He also used to buy her things a lot, like when they hung out and she saw something that she wanted. He would say something like, "Oh, I'll just get it for you." He even got her a Valentine's Day card as well as some candy this year. Whenever we are together, he talks about her a lot. If we're together and she sends him something over the phone, he'll stop what he's doing and say, "Oh, look at what she sent me. Isn't this a cool picture?" Stuff along those lines. And to top it all off, my boyfriend said that if we ever had any problems in our relationship, he said that he would go to her, which was really disturbing to hear. For the record, we haven't really had any fights, and we're on good terms and we settle disagreements pretty quickly. Overall, I don't really know what to do, or if this is even a reasonable concern. The last thing I'd want is to initiate any sort of rift in their friendship, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm getting more and more uncomfortable over time. How can I approach this with him, if at all, and still maintain their friendship? Because the last thing I want to do is tear that apart. What should I do? This is definitely a tough situation to be stuck in. I can completely understand where you're coming from, where his female best friend seems to have a better relationship with him than you do, and that can be really concerning. And it's also kind of concerning to hear that he would go to her if you guys had any issues. That could definitely be seen as a big red flag. But I think overall, I think you just need to talk to him and find some kind of boundaries. It seems like he really values his friendship with this girl, and I think that's exactly what it is. It's just a friendship. I would be more concerned if there was any indication of flirting or anything along those lines that would lead you to believe that there was more than just a friendship on your hands. And from the sounds of it, it doesn't really seem like there's anything like that. So I really wouldn't be worried about something that isn't the case, because that's just gonna drive you nuts otherwise. My girlfriend of 4 months is constantly in a bad mood, and I honestly don't know what to do or how to handle this situation. First, a bit of background. My girlfriend and I met on a dating app 5 months ago. We both gravitated towards each other because we were both single parents. Our kids are coincidentally 4 days apart, which laid the foundation for a great start to the relationship. We both come from horrible past experiences, and we're both kind of hesitant and nervous at the start. But after a month of dates, almost every other day, we decided to make it official. Everything at first went fine and dandy. We laugh and we get along, we share great experiences together, but unfortunately, I have become increasingly concerned about my girlfriend. She is, to me, my dream girl. The way she held herself and the way she talked when we first started was so magnetizing. In fact, our kids get along great. I seriously see a future with all of them, but one thing keeps holding me back. She constantly goes through mood swings, and they're always usually more negative than positive. And that's not to say that I don't have my moments either, but I'm extremely more optimistic than she is, and I always find myself having to be the caregiver when it comes to emotions. I put mine aside to help her with hers. I tend to steer clear of saying what's on my mind in fear it will lead to arguments, which have seemed to become a common occurrence lately. We've talked about communication, and we both agree that communication is the key and crucial to any relationship, but sometimes I get a lot of nothing is wrong followed by miserable vibes when we are together, as well as super dry text messages, which leaves me very confused as to what's actually going on or if anything is actually bothering her or not. I don't like the fact that I have to walk on eggshells because it just brings back times from my previous relationship, but despite it all, I choose to keep quiet so a storm doesn't happen. She knows I'm there for her anytime she needs it, and our children have bonded so well with each other, as well as with us. So because of that, I don't want to call this quits, but I'm getting emotionally exhausted trying to keep up, and I can feel it bringing down my optimistic side. I try so hard to always reinforce positive discussions, but it feels like it's never enough. She will be okay for like a day or two, and then it's back to square one. I don't want to lose her, especially since I've seen her at her positive stages and is the main reason I fell in love with her, but I am totally torn on why and how she could have flipped her feelings so quickly. I'm always the first one to kiss, to hug, to be affectionate, and it makes me wonder if she's just losing feelings for me. Should I just stop wasting her time? I guess I'm just looking for advice on what to do, and if there could be any way I can derail this train before it gets worse and hopefully get back to the person I fell in love with. What should I do? This is a rough one because 5 months is really early for you to feel like you're walking on eggshells around her. I think you really need to have a serious conversation with her and explain that this is really becoming a problem for you and that this is affecting your relationship with her. You obviously love her a lot and you want to make this work, not just for the two of you, but also for your kids and hers. They've bonded really nicely, and I'm sure that makes you really happy. I know if I was in your shoes, I would probably be really excited that my kids have another set of kids kids that they can try and call siblings. But this is definitely a hurdle that you have to get over. So hopefully that conversation goes well, and hopefully there's able to be some kind of significant change, because otherwise this is just going to cause problems. And for the sake of your kids as well as your relationship, I really hope it works out. My husband is really controlling about what food we're allowed to eat, and it's honestly starting to cause some problems between the two of us, and I'm not sure what to do. First, for a bit of background, my husband and I have been together for 8 years. My husband is 35 and I'm 33. We've been married for 3 years as well. It's a pretty happy marriage, and generally we get along great. We see eye to eye on most things. We don't have any kids, and we're very career-minded. We love to travel and agree on housework and the division of labor. I do the cooking and the trash. He mostly does the dishes and the laundry. About once a week, we partner up to clean the apartment top to bottom. It's a good arrangement overall, and we're both very happy. However, there is one issue that keeps coming up, and it has brought me here today because I would really like some advice on how to handle it better. Despite our similarities, we have two very key differences as they pertain to this reoccurring issue. For one, he is a very meticulous planner and can get anxious if plans don't go his way, while I'm a lot more easygoing. The other issue involves the fact that he usually eats one big meal for the entire day, while also having some breakfast as well as the occasional snack. But I am very different in this regards. I rarely eat a lot in one sitting and prefer to graze and eat small portions frequently throughout the day. Usually it's not an issue. We will go out to eat and I'll take half of my meal to go, and I'll just finish it later or on the next day. However, whenever meals have to do with plans, his anxiety enters into it, and we end up arguing and I end up crying. Then he will apologize more to end the fight, and it all stems from the fact that he would rather not see me cry than try to understand the issue. Because of that, all of this just repeats over and over again. For example, my birthday is in 2 weeks. We had planned to take a nice long weekend and drive up the Maine coastline to hopefully see some fall foliage and get some chowder at this little place that we love that closes at the end of September. He rented a small cottage on Airbnb, and we were both very much looking forward to it, but fate conspired against us twice. First of all, our dog sitter texted us and said that she and her fiance were moving to Canada in 2 weeks, so she wouldn't be able to watch our greyhounds as planned. We started looking for new sitters, but our boys are special needs, so we weren't having much luck, especially in that tight of a time frame. Then, he received word that he'd have to travel for business the day before my birthday, and he had to do this to meet up with an important client, so there really was no workaround. My birthday trip would just have to be postponed. I was disappointed, but I understood. It was sad for both of us that we would likely miss the foliage, as well as that restaurant that serves that delicious chowder that's about to close up shop for the season without us getting a bowl. He promised he would figure out something fun to make up for it, and I made plans with friends while he was away in Wyoming. This being Labor Day weekend, we both have today off, so he surprised me with a day trip up the coast to get some chowder. It was very sweet of him, and I was very excited. We left early in the morning for the 6-hour drive and grabbed breakfast on the way. I ordered a coffee and 3 donuts, planning to eat them along the way, but somehow I only ended up with 1. This is going to be important later. So we're driving, and while the leaves haven't changed yet, the scenery is still lovely, and we are chatting about how much fun it would be to retire later in life this far north. As we're driving, we see signs for a little farm that mentions fresh peaches. I absolutely adore peaches, so I ask if we can make a quick detour. The place is adorable. I buy some preserves and some peaches, and I notice a sign saying that they have fresh peach ice cream, which according to them is the best you've ever tasted or your money back. I ask for a sample, and it absolutely is the best peach ice cream I've ever had. So because of that, I order a small container with just 2 scoops. Nothing major. My husband asks if I want a lid for the container, but I tell him no, I'm fine without one. We go over to the checkout area, and he asks me if I want to see if they have any ice packs or a cooler. I tell him once again, no, I'm fine. We get back in the car, and I start eating my ice cream. I've had 1 donut all day, and we've been driving for almost 4 hours, so I'm a little hungry. I eagerly dip into my ice cream. My husband then asks if I would like to pull over so we can get the insulated bag we keep in the trunk, and once again, I tell him no, I'm fine. I get about halfway through my ice cream when he loudly asks me to please stop eating that. I ask him what his problem is, and he says that he's worried I won't have room for the chowder that he has been driving 6 hours just to get, as well as another 6 hours of driving just to get back home. I tell him that I'm fine and that I only had one donut instead of the 3 I had planned, and that we still have 2 hours to go before we get there. Ice cream is mostly liquid anyway, and he wouldn't care if I were drinking something instead of eating a small cup of ice cream. At this point, he gets annoyed, and he says that I always do this, and that I constantly ruin my meals by snacking all the time. And he said this in a way that comes across as really hurtful. I didn't have the best upbringing. He knows this. I used to get slapped for not cleaning my plate as a child, and he knows this aspect of it too. It took me years to get over the feeling of guilt and just general badness when I didn't finish all of my food. I am personally just so much more comfortable eating smaller amounts throughout the day. I don't like feeling very full, I guess. I couldn't stop myself. I wasn't trying to be dramatic, but I teared up. I put the rest of my ice cream in the cup holder and turned to look out the window. He noticed, of course, and apologized. But I know it wasn't because he understands that I know my own body and could happily have eaten 2 scoops of ice cream and a big bowl of chowder with oyster crackers 2 hours later. He was only apologizing because he wanted me to stop crying, all because he doesn't like arguments. I know his anxiety around wanting to plan this awesome surprise for me and worrying that I was going to ruin it by not being hungry when we got there. And I know that this is what made him snap like that. And I tried to explain to him that he just needs to trust me, and that I know how much I want to eat, and I know what his plan was, and that it didn't make sense to me that he planned this amazing day to make me happy, and instead of letting me enjoy my surprise peach ice cream and being happy, he would then turn this on me and basically make me cry over some ice cream. Even after explaining all of this to him, he then asks if we can just let this go and move on. But I can't help but feel that this is very unresolved. We've had this same argument before, almost verbatim. We have dinner plans, or it's a holiday, or there's a party or a function of some kind where there's gonna be food. And if I have anything at all to eat, even hours beforehand, he'll get annoyed and snap at me that I'm going to spoil my appetite, or that I won't be hungry for dinner. Personally, I don't like being hungry. I hate that feeling, and I am so much happier keeping a more even level of snacks and small meals during the day, so I never have to feel overly hungry or overly full. I don't see what's so wrong about not finishing everything, or asking for the rest of my meal to go. It's not like I would have eaten that much more chowder if I decided to finish the ice cream or not. I was probably going to eat the same amount regardless. This constantly keeps happening, and I honestly don't know what to do. It sounds like your husband is trying to act like a parent more than he's being a husband. I understand that he's got anxiety. I understand he has these serious plans about what he wants to do, but that does not mean that he needs to interject himself into your eating habits constantly. Like, that's just obnoxious in my opinion, and there's really not a good excuse for that. He needs to do a much better job of maintaining his own emotions and not taking it out on you. And mind you, this is all over eating ice cream before you get chowder. The original poster has it right. There's no reason to freak out over this. And I think you definitely need to have a conversation with your husband about how weird and controlling he's being towards your eating habits, as well as the fact that he's treating you like a child instead of a partner, because this behavior is absolutely unacceptable, as there is no good reason why he should be bringing you to tears, only to then try and force you to drop the subject. I don't care how much he doesn't like confrontation, it's time for him to man up and be better. Otherwise, this problem is only going to get worse. My entitled parents break into my house while I'm away for work and squat for weeks, refusing to leave and demanding to live there for free. Things got so bad that I had to get the police involved just to kick them out. Here's what happened. I'm a 30-year-old male, and my parents didn't really want kids. I was an only child and pretty much an accidental pregnancy, from what relatives have told me, as my parents claimed that they were going to be child-free when they were married. My childhood was initially good, but I think that once I grew out of the cute and adorable phase, my parents were less inclined to spend time with me. They both worked and had their own business that they started together. That business was their life, and I was always second fiddle to it. Any other close family members, like my grandparents, lived states away, and I barely knew anything about them until I was an adult. So I had no other family around me my entire childhood. I was practically raised by TV and my school teachers. My own birthdays by the time I became a teenager were often spent without my parents, as they would just give me some money and tell me to go out and buy whatever I wanted. It was more or less the same with Christmas, and sometimes even back to school shopping. We would not have even bothered with a Christmas tree after I turned 10 if it weren't for the fact that I convinced my parents to just buy a fake one that I could build up and then take apart later every year. If I were to describe my parents, it would be best to think of them as those people who always wore black, drink lots of wine, and look down their noses at other people. And the last time I saw my parents, they still looked and acted the same way, although my father was always wearing a toupee now. When I turned 16, I asked my parents if I could work part-time for them at their business, and they just told me that they had no open positions for anything like that. They may as well have just come right out and said that they don't want me there. After I turned 18, my parents told me that since I was an adult, they expect me to move out as soon as possible. I was working part-time because I was still in high school, and I didn't have anywhere near enough saved for college. But not long after high school ended, my parents told me to pack up and move out. They got an official eviction notice that gave me 30 days and everything. They didn't even help me move. I had to get help from a friend's dad who owns a truck. I ended up renting a really terrible apartment and working retail. I had no real life experience and no time for college. Then, after just a few months, I got fired because my manager legitimately had it out for me and wrote me up for the stupidest things you could think of. And worst of all, I'm not the only person that he would do this to. I called corporate about it, and so did a few other people. Well, corporate looked into the manager, and they were soon fired for various reasons. Not many of which I actually know, since it was mostly kept quiet. But someone told me that theft and cigarettes were a part of it. The manager in question was a chain smoker. Corporate refused to hire me back, and only said that they would change the record to say that I was laid off instead of terminated, so my resume would still be clean. I guess they must have considered me to be damaged goods or something. I ended up going broke pretty fast because I was terrible at managing my own money, and I couldn't find steady employment. So I lost my apartment, and I went back to my parents begging for help, but they refused to take me in, not even for a little while to get me back on my feet. I ended up homeless and living out of a tent in someone's backyard in the winter. My friends had all moved on to college, some in other states, and I was a broke kid taking whatever work I could just to stay alive. My salvation came when one of the neighbors of my parents found out I was living out of a tent and offered to take me in for a little while so I wouldn't freeze. She helped me bother my parents enough into them telling me about other members of my estranged family. My parents did not want to say though. My guess is out of fear of being judged for throwing their son out the way that they did. But they coughed up the info and gave me a list of contact details, and then told me not to bother them ever again. So I called my grandparents from my father's side of the family, and they were very surprised and happy to hear from me because they hadn't seen me since I was an infant, and I'm their only grandchild. My grandparents, after finding out about my situation, flew me over to live with them as soon as they could. They basically adopted me at this point. My parents didn't even see me off to the airport, despite being invited to do just that. I had zero contact with them for pretty much a decade. My grandparents said that they despise my parents for treating me so poorly. They have basically legally disowned them by striking them from their wills. My parents, I'm told, were not happy to hear that, but also said that it didn't matter because they were plenty well off and didn't need anything from my grandparents. But it's funny how the world works, because boy, how wrong that statement turned out to be. After about a year of living with my grandparents, I was able to afford to start going to community college. I got an associate's degree, I got a decent job thanks to a recommendation from my grandfather, and eventually my grandparents offered to sell me their house so they could retire in Arizona. My grandma wanted to live in a warmer climate as the cold winter was getting harder and harder on her health every year. I was sad to see them go, but I happily bought the house. They sold it to me for 1/3 its value, and I will have it paid off in just a few more years. My job has me going away on the road periodically, so I can end up away from home for weeks at a time. Not that I mind the travel. I have no pets or a girlfriend or anything like that. I honestly wouldn't have time for them right now, but in a few years when I have some things in order, I'll make time. I don't want to be a lonely bachelor for the rest of my life. And now with all of that in mind, one day in late 2020, I came home after being away for only 2 weeks, only to find a large white van I did not recognize in my driveway. I was getting ready to call the police when I noticed the van had the logo for my parents' business on the side of it. And at that point, I felt such a sense of dread. Yes, you guessed it, my parents were there. They had broken in somehow and were living out of my home. And they had the nerve to greet me like we were buddy-buddy the moment I walked in. I told them to get out of my house, but they refused to do so because it was Grandma and Grandpa's house. I said it wasn't their house anymore, stating that they sold it to me when they retired, and they would have known this if they were involved in my life in any way, shape, or form. But they threw me to the wolves 10 years prior with no life experience. We argued and they refused to leave. My father told me it was his parents' house first, and that apparently meant that that he and my mother had every right to live there if they wanted to. I walked right into my bedroom, locked the door, and called the police. When the cops showed up, they were of no help. My parents claimed to them that they had already been there long enough to have residency, which was an absolute complete lie. But I had no cameras to prove they weren't there for a month. My neighbors had no cameras either, so it was my word against my parents over how long they'd actually really been there. And they were claiming squatters' rights. They told the police they had a verbal rental agreement with me and that I was trying to illegally evict them for no reason. My mother even started to cry when she said that. The police told me it was a family dispute and to file an eviction with the courts to get them out. And this was in 2020. Getting to court for anything took longer because of the pandemic. Meanwhile, my parents are squatting in my house rent-free and rubbing it in my face. For the information I got out of them, their business went bankrupt and they sold off almost everything they had to pay their debts. All they had left was the van and a few personal belongings. So they expected to live in my house rent-free for the foreseeable future. They were both working as well. My father was a delivery driver and my mom was a sales associate. They were making money and the only things they paid for were electricity and water bills, which was basically just handing me a $100 bill every month and saying I should be grateful they were paying me anything. Anytime I tried to discuss proper rent with them, they just said I owed it to them to live rent-free because I took 18 years of their lives. And it's not like they were demanding the money back for that time. They threatened to stop helping with the utilities altogether. I was so at my wit's end that I ended up calling my grandparents to explain the situation to them. They were very unhappy and spoke with my parents, but my parents still said that they had every right to stay in my house and refused to budge on anything. My grandfather told me that he was sorry it had to come to this, and that if they hadn't sold the house, my parents wouldn't have invaded. I told him not to be sorry. I'd already filed for a legal eviction and would be getting it soon enough, and my parents already knew that they were on borrowed time. I made sure to say that in earshot of my parents too. They only gave me the silent treatment. My father was away most of the time, driving a delivery vehicle 6 days out of the week, which was a job really not to his liking, and my mother basically tried to take over my house in her spare time. She demanded that I let her rearrange my living room and even tried to force me to give her and my father the master bedroom, all because they were my parents and that they deserved it. I vetoed both of those things and said that they don't deserve better and to stop trying to act like I owe them anything. I didn't ask to be born, and it's a normal obligation for parents to raise their own children, and all they were doing was trying to assert dominance to try and keep me from kicking them out. Finally, after 4 months and now into early 2021, I managed to take my parents to court over their squatting. We only needed to go to court because they fought the eviction and tried to gaslight me into rescinding it. They tried to use the fact that it was formerly my grandparents' house and the fact that they were giving me $100 a month as some sort of leverage for residency. But there was no real rental agreement, and they were smart enough not to try and forge one, as that would have been fraud. So the judge ordered that they needed to be out in a maximum of 30 days because they had zero claim on my house. After court, they confronted me and said they were disappointed in me for kicking out my own flesh and blood. And when they said that, I couldn't help but laugh and call them hypocrites, because that's exactly what they did to me without a single care in the world for my well-being. They had no love for me, so I have no love for them. I owed them nothing. They just tried to act like everything that was mine was actually theirs. But they had no right to call themselves my parents because they've never really acted like it. I called them a pair of snobby, lying narcissists to their faces and told them to get their affairs in order because they already know I won't hesitate to call the police if they don't leave my house when the 30 days are over. And when I said that, my father looked enraged, but my mother stopped him from saying or doing anything by grabbing his shoulder and shaking her head. He sneered at me and walked away. They left, but not without a lot of tension. That final month was spent with them either guilting me to try and make me change my mind or completely ignoring me. I put up a calendar in the living room and checked off each day before they had to leave with a red marker, and the exact day that they were meant to be out was marked with a big red circle. My parents waited until the exact day that they had to leave my home for good before they finally left. Even when all their stuff was out of the house, they were still sleeping on the floor in the guest bedroom for a few days. I guess because they were so convinced that they could make me let them stay. They didn't even bother to try and look for an apartment until the court eviction went through, and my mother spent weeks scrambling to find an apartment. They had to get a tiny, terrible studio apartment in the next city over because it was the only thing they could find on such short notice, which really is some beautiful karma, because this is exactly what I had to do when I was 18. I drove my my mother over to see it once, and the apartment was terrible. The walls were a baby barf green, and the carpet looked like it was 20 years old. The only window just had a view of a brick wall outside, and there was no dishwasher. My mother went out of her way to try and give me sad looks while dropping hints that I should be feeling guilty and that I was reducing them to live in such a space. But I just acted oblivious to it all until she finally stopped doing that. They signed the lease right away and moved what little stuff they had into the apartment over the weekend. They also ended up demanding the queen-size bed, dresser, and flat-screen TV from my guest bedroom. I told them to just take it and get out because I no longer wanted them in my house after they spent 5 months sleeping in that room. They looked at me like I was treating them as though they were diseased and demanded nothing more. The moment they had to leave for good, I started changing the locks on all exterior doors. All of their garbage was at the apartment, and they had spent their last night in my guest bedroom. They watched me start ripping the old lock off the front door as they were getting into the van. They said nothing to me, and I said nothing to them, but they just sat and watched for a while until I had a new doorknob on the door. Then they finally left. I breathed a massive sigh of relief the second that van went down the road. I figured karma had finally come for them, and they could live under a rock for all I care. But nope, my grandparents heard from them recently. They had called them to brag about their new business, similar to their old one that went under, and apparently it was making good money, which allowed them to start looking down on others once again. I've already Googled their business, and apparently it really is doing well. They have many positive reviews and everything, but truth be told, I feel pretty resentful. They put me through being homeless, squatted illegally in my house for months, then went right back to being the snobby, wine-drinking business people that they used to be. So if karma really is real, it's taking just a little bit too long for my liking. What a crazy circumstance to be in. I definitely can understand where the original poster is coming from, where they're upset that their parents somehow got back on their feet. And honestly, you can't control that. But what you can control is the fact that they are out of your life. You legitimately never have to deal with them ever again. You were able to say your piece and essentially get back at them for what they did to you. You kicked them out when times were tough, and you showed them exactly how you felt when you got kicked out. All because you were 18 years old and just a child. I mean, those parents really did suck overall. So if anything, I would just be glad that you never have to deal with them ever again in your life. And that alone really could be the best silver lining to come out of all of this. My boyfriend doesn't want to get a job, but he is a lovely person. But right now, I'm not sure if I should stay with him. What should I do? I am a 27-year-old female, and I have been in a relationship with my boyfriend for about a year now. He is 35 years old. When it comes to me, I am financially stable and I own my own house. When I met my boyfriend, I was under the impression that he was well-to-do because the area he lived in was very fancy. It turns out that he sleeps on his parents' couch and is unemployed. But I didn't care because he was super loving and very patient with me. I've taken him on holidays, bought him presents, stayed at fancy hotels. I've spent money on lots of meals for us, and I was thinking of getting a house for us, and we were joking around, saying that he was my sugar baby. It was fun at first, and then led to an argument last week over the longevity of our relationship if I lost my money overnight, or if I just didn't have any money anymore. So I asked him the question, what if I didn't have any money anymore? What would happen to our relationship? But all he could say is that it would be a shame. And now, because he said that, I feel really disgusted. It's made me rethink our relationship a lot. His counter argument is that money is not our whole relationship, stating that he has put equal amounts of effort in by looking after me emotionally. Admittedly, I am a demanding partner, as I have BPD and I am a bit spoiled. I have been with him for a year because he's caring, loving, and understanding. No one has ever taken such time in listening to me with such patience and care. Most of my previous exes have had 9-to-5 jobs and often not been able to cater to my emotional needs due to work as well as daily stressors. So I do get where he is coming from. However, I also wonder if this relationship is still worth pursuing. He thinks that taking the time to look after me is his way of love and is equated to the money I've spent on him. He has no motivation to get a job, and this has been going on for as long as I've known him. His reasoning is that he does not simply want to get some random job because he thinks it's better to spend his energies somewhere else. So I really don't know if he has a lot of money. If anything, I think he just gets money from his parents so he can buy food for himself. So with his stomach full and a roof over his head, I get why he's not bothered to work. Should I stay in this relationship? I was never looking for a sugar baby, but this is currently how things have worked out. What should I do? I think if you want to have some kind of longevity in your relationship, then he definitely needs to get a job. The man is 35 years old, and he only has money because his parents give him money. Like, that's so irresponsible at that age. There's just no good excuse in my opinion. opinion. And sure, he's there for you emotionally, but he's also only there because he has a roof over his head and he's got food in his stomach. In my opinion, this guy is just a leech. He is using you for money and shelter. And if I were in your shoes, this would personally be a big deal breaker. I wouldn't put up with this for a second, and I'm really surprised you do. Because I think you know for a fact that if the money and the house disappeared, he would most likely go to somebody else and try to find another sugar mama to take care of his needs and his wants. And that is exactly how he views you. You're taking care of every physical need that he could want. And if that all disappeared, I guarantee you he would as well. So in my opinion, I think you can do so much better than this guy because your boyfriend is honestly just a leech. And unless he makes some serious changes and I don't know, gets a job, then I really don't see this relationship lasting very long at all. My boyfriend's sleeping issues are becoming a problem, and I'm not sure what to do. I've been with my boyfriend for 7 years, and we recently moved in together. We've been on long road trips where we slept together for 1 to 2 months at a time, and no serious issues came up. We've also had a few other sleepovers with no problems. The other day, I got home late from school and went to kiss my boyfriend on the head while he was asleep. He suddenly jolts awake and had one hand out to grab my throat and the other in a fist. At first, I was laughing because of how much a kiss startled him, while he looked horrified. Last night, he woke up at around 4 in the morning by squeezing my arm with both hands, then jolting awake. In the morning, I tried to talk to him and say he should go see a doctor and how it seems like he has some kind of unresolved trauma, but he didn't want to talk about it. Sometimes when I sleep on his chest, I accidentally lay my arm around his neck, and he always lowers my arm and tells me it feels like I'm choking him. He admitted he had a dream where his father was holding him down and he was trying to gain leverage to flip him over, hence why he grabbed my arm with both hands. He also said he woke up with my arm around his neck and that may have been what triggered it. Another time on our trip, he jolted awake and sat up. He admitted that he had a dream that he had been in a car accident. Earlier this year, he was in an accident where he got hit on the driver's side and his car got totaled. He admitted to feeling like he had PTSD for a few months, but that it's mostly faded away. My boyfriend lived in a terrible house as a child, all for about 8 years, and finally moved out 3 years ago. While he lived there, there were times when he would wake up at 2 in the morning to his father and girlfriend physically fighting and punching holes in the wall. They would wake him up and drag him into what was happening. There's also been times where he's had to take his sisters out of the situation and has gotten into fights with his father and his girlfriend just to protect his sisters. I also know he used to sleep with a knife under his pillow and has had to call the cops on his father's girlfriend in the past for things that she would try to do to him. When I would visit him at his dorm, he'd only sleep with the door shut and locked. I don't know if this was because of his roommates or if this was because of some of his previous trauma. Now, he'll only sleep with the door shut, something I had to just get used to once I moved in. And he also wouldn't fall asleep until I fell asleep first. He used to go to bed very late, between 1 to 4 in the morning, and had admitted that he was scared to fall asleep in the past. Everything is starting to come together more, and I'm not sure what to do. My boyfriend was in therapy for 10 years and doesn't want to start it again. He's managed his problems of the past, but they all seem to come out in his sleep. He said if he goes to a doctor, they'll just prescribe him anti-anxiety pills or recommend therapy, so he doesn't want to go. He told me to avoid touching him in his sleep, and how he thinks the serious incident happened because I wasn't already home, so he didn't know who I was while he was asleep. This situation is really messy and very sensitive, and I'm not sure what to do. That is really terrible that your boyfriend went through that. It sounds like he has some really bad PTSD. I can only imagine being brought up in a household like that, where it's so dangerous that you don't even know if you can go to sleep properly. That had to have been scary, and obviously that affected him in a serious way. And while I'm sure he has dealt with his problems in the past, it does sound like there's still things going on. So I think therapy probably would be the best bet for him at this point. He gets physically violent in his sleep, and I can see this becoming a problem or being really dangerous in the future. I think you're getting off lucky of what he could accidentally do if he wasn't aware that it was you in the first place. I mean, he almost punched you in the face when you woke him up by kissing him on the forehead, and he even used to sleep with a knife under his pillow. I mean, that is some serious trauma right there. I know you love your boyfriend and you want to spend time with him, but it probably would be smart to sleep in a separate bed for now. These problems clearly come out when he's sleeping, and the last thing you need is to get injured or hurt, all because he starts having another episode while he's asleep. My mother tried to force me to get married to someone I've never even met before. She even went as far as as changing the locks on the house to prevent me from coming home. And once I said no, I'm not getting married to this stranger, my mom blew up on me, but not without my grandmother stepping in like an absolute boss. Here's what happened. So I went out on a Friday for a few hours with some friends. It was just some shopping and some catching up between us. I haven't seen some of them for the last 2 years due to COVID, when we used to hang out almost every week, and I am leaving the country in a few weeks. So we took this opportunity to catch up as well as have a farewell party. I was out from late afternoon until about 9 or 10 o'clock at night when I got home, and when I took the keys out of my pocket to unlock the gate, the keys would not fit. I tried to turn the key around, thinking maybe I just put it in the wrong way, but still it just would not fit. So I called my mom, but she would not pick up. I then called my grandmother, who lives with me, but she was out with her friends as well and won't be home anytime soon. At this point, I was super upset. My mother already burned a couple of my work pants the day before because I refused to wear a dress for work. My line of work, for some reference, requires me to move around a lot, so a dress or an office skirt was not suited for my environment. I shook the gate, but no one was home, so I ended up having to pick the lock. I opened the metal gate after a few tries, and luckily, the wooden door behind it was not locked. The neighbors did call the police, and of course, I had to show them I actually lived there, as well as that this was my legal address. I took some essentials and went to stay at my friend's house for the night because I couldn't lock the door back, and I didn't feel safe in the house without a locked door. The next day, my grandmother and I were invited to go to a pre-wedding event. It was kind of meeting the elders and engaging the party/ceremony at a cafe. And at the time, my mother only sent me this address and the time for the event, and it was perfectly normal for my grandmother to be invited to something like this, as she's always invited by my mother, so it seemed normal. So we both showed up on time to the cafe, and we were escorted to a booth-type seat at the corner of the cafe. The booth already had a lady as well as another guy there. I assumed she was the mother and the guy was her son. The moment we sat down, the lady took out a calendar and notepads filled with lists of flower arrangements, color schemes, menus, dresses, hairstyles, and all these meticulous things related to a wedding. She introduced her son, who was 28 years old compared to my 20 years old, and she told me what he does for a living, what he studies, and where. And that's when she said something that just absolutely blew my mind. She thanked me that I was agreeing to marry him. I looked at her, then at her son, and then at the wedding planners and the notes. It was then at that very moment that I finally registered what was going on. This wasn't a wedding or engagement ceremony for somebody else. They were planning for my wedding. My grandmother at the time was incredibly angry. I apologized to the lady and said that there must be some kind of misunderstanding between us because I came to attend someone's engagement party, not plan my own. And I added that I was only 20 years old this year. My grandmother then chimed in and blatantly asked this lady why on earth she thought that I would be marrying her son. The lady then replied that her mom contacted me and said that her daughter was looking for a partner and a husband to settle down with so that I could move out. My grandmother calmly said to the lady that she has been lied to and that I was not getting married anytime soon. She said her son seems happy and nice and that she hopes that he finds someone to marry him in the future, but it was not going to be me. We got up and then we left. When we got home, I found my things stuffed in black plastic bags beside my door. My grandmother opened the door and told me to bring my stuff in. The moment I stepped through the door, my mother yelled that she put so much effort into finding a guy who would take a girl like me to marry, and that I should be grateful she didn't just marry me off to an older dude, and that I should be happy she found someone my age. She told me I embarrassed her because the mother called her and told her what she did was not okay, and to not do it again without even asking or informing me properly. My grandmother then started to shout at my mother in Cantonese, which resulted in them being in a heated argument for about 30 minutes, and my grandmother kicked out my mother, which of course she moaned and groaned and cried about before leaving. Needless to say, I don't plan on getting married to some stranger anytime soon. That is absolutely crazy to me. This lady actually tried to marry off her daughter to some guy that she's never even met before. I don't know, maybe she just wanted her daughter to get out of her house, which is why she changed the key to the gate, thus trying to prevent her from ever coming back in the house. But if you wanted someone to move out, why wouldn't you just talk to him and say, hey, you gotta move out. You've got 30 days, figure your stuff out. Like, that's the reasonable thing to do, right? Instead, she finds some guy who's almost 10 years older than her, right after she barely turned 20, by the way, and said, okay, you're gonna marry this guy. Didn't even ask her about it. She didn't even date this guy for a few years, nothing like that. She just expected her daughter to get married to a complete stranger. And I think at this point, there's obviously some cultural differences here that I don't get and I won't understand completely coming from my own perspective, which is fine. I totally understand that. But based on the daughter as well as the grandmother's reaction, I think this is safe to assume that this is not the norm in whatever culture these people come from. Instead, based on their reaction, I think it's safe to say that this was incredibly toxic and very jarring, as I can't imagine somebody waking up the next day and finding out that someone was trying to force them to get married. I want to distance myself from my family and their business, but I really don't want to hurt their feelings or cause a rift in my family, and I honestly don't know what to do. For some background, I was homeschooled from the age of 12 to 18, and my parents totally failed on the socialization front. I was isolated and very lonely through most of my childhood, and from then to now, they have had some very controlling rules for me, and I have basically been on house arrest for 2.5 years due to their extreme pandemic paranoia. And while I do love my parents, I am going to be moving out. I feel like we've been slightly enmeshed, and I want some distance. For 10 years, my parents also have had a few small businesses. The latest one they're focusing on now is doing the best, but they have all struggled, with tens of thousands of dollars put into all of them. I don't think that they've even cracked $6,000 in revenue yet. For years, I help with this business, lately in editing as well as proofreading their books. I'm not a professional proofreader, nor is this my profession, but I'm good enough with grammar that they've recruited me. And this is after trying several editors who were incompetent and too expensive. I also edit from home. They don't feel very comfortable sending e-copies to strangers in fear of their ideas being stolen. Moreover, I've invested a lot of belief in this thing, supporting their dreams to become millionaires with their projects. After a lot of reflection, I see these as more hobby businesses and will likely never become that successful. I'm finishing up editing a book right now, but when I leave in a month, I want that to be my last one. The thing is, my parents will not take it well. They've already asked, "When you move, will you help us sell books at farmers markets on the weekends still?" And while I said yes, I will do 1 or 2 more with them after I move out, but after that, I'm done. I'm not doing any more. I can't just say I want to stop editing, bye, because I fear that my parents will take it the wrong way. They will then start asking me stuff like, "Why are you distancing yourself from us?" with the implication that I don't want to support my family. They will get hurt, offended, and will just start throwing accusations my way. I want to leave in a way where hopefully it dawns on them, oh, she has her own life. She should move on and do her own thing. But that may not happen because my parents feel I can always give a little time to them to support the family goals. I do have free time, but it's just that I have to put healthy distances between us. I don't want to edit anymore, but knowing that I'm available and have said yes for years that I believe in this business, it may be whiplash for my parents, and they will likely call me selfish. What should I do? I think you have every right to move on with your life and do exactly what you want to do. And if your parents or your family don't like the fact that you're moving away from editing for them, well then tough cookies, that's their problem. Did they really think you would be doing this for the rest of your life? I mean, they can't hold you hostage and expect you to do this all the time. You have other goals and aspirations in life, and this is not one of them. So for them to get angry and weird about this, it's just really selfish in my opinion. So I would say go ahead with your plan and start making the plan of getting away from this. You don't want to do it anymore, and you just need to make your feelings known. You can even give them some kind of transition period so they can find somebody to replace your efforts that you've done for years. And yes, there is someone available that they can find that can do this. And it's not fair for them to try and guilt trip you into still doing this. And if anything, that's more than enough reason for you to say, okay, I think I'm done. So hopefully your family takes this news well, because either way, you're moving on with your life, whether they like it or not. My girlfriend repeatedly lied to me about meeting up with her ex just so she could get some closure, and I could not be more upset. So this ex of hers still sent her flowers at the start of our relationship out of the blue, and she very early on cut him out and asked him to stop communicating with her. They had a phone call a few weeks ago after we first met where she officially told him to stop contacting her and that she had met someone new and that she moved on. And I do actually believe this was the case, as they had not been in contact since December and January. So me and my girlfriend had a very quick blossoming relationship. 7 months in, I got offered a job abroad, but everything was going so well that we discussed it in length, and she was at a point in her life where she had to finish university and was ready for something new. So even though we knew it was a bit crazy, she decided she was going to come with me abroad. The only issue was I had to move quicker than she could. So I was abroad for 10 weeks before she was going to move out. Before I left, she heard her ex was going to be in town. They broke up because he moved away for work. Plus, he didn't treat her well, apparently. She warned me that they might bump into each other, which would be rough rough during long distance. At the time, I said if she felt like she needed to talk to him or whatever, then we could both talk about it. But I needed her to be honest with me about it regardless. We had already had a falling out previously about people from the past reaching out, and we both agreed we should be honest with each other going forward with that stuff. The week before she's due to fly out to meet me, she supposedly bumped into him on the street out of nowhere. She told me it was totally accident too. She proceeded to go missing in action for 2 to 3 hours and finally responded to me to tell me that she had bumped into him and had coffee in the park. I was upset that she didn't take a second to just let me know what was happening and left me wondering what on earth was going on during long distance. We had a fight about it and she kept telling me that she couldn't help how the situation played out, but she handled it as best as she could. But I made the decision to trust her, even though something felt off about the entire thing. A week later, she flew out and moved her whole life to be with me. She quit her job and found a new one out here. Last night, I quizzed her on the whole situation and she started to panic. She started getting defensive when I asked to see the conversations that she had been having with him. It turns out that she had went behind my back and went out of her way to meet up with him. It wasn't an accident. She said she wanted closure on it and put a nail in the coffin and told him officially that she was moving on. He apparently treated her badly, and she heard through a mutual friend that he still felt like they were going to get back together at some point. After their meetup, they had some text conversations back and forth, as well as another phone call. And on the day before she flew out, he sent her hundreds of messages, confessing his love for her and basically saying she was making the wrong decision, to which she didn't reply. I've not seen the full extent, just a glance when she showed me, so I only found all this out last night. I've realized that she lied to my face and took me for a complete idiot. I am now suspicious that what she told me that took place isn't the truth. The web of lies surrounding it is quite impressive when I go back and read our WhatsApp chat from that time. Even if she's telling the truth about why she met him, she still lied to me over and over again. She claims that she wanted to do this for herself and that telling me would just cause some confrontation right before she's flying out to meet me, which should have been a beautiful reunion for us after 10 weeks of long distance dating basically. But now she's put me in a very difficult situation. I think if I were back home right now and this happened, my gut would be telling me to just break up with her. But now she's basically stranded out here. I've been cheated on before and refused to be taken for an idiot again, so I have no idea how to proceed. She's got a hotel room for the next few nights to give me space. She's very apologetic now and is upset. She's offered for me to read the full WhatsApp history with her ex to prove she was never unfaithful, and she only did it to get stuff off of her chest and to tell him that she's moving on. She has also offered to phone her 2 flatmates, who I know quite well, who were the ones who encouraged her to go get closure with her ex who treated her so badly. But I just don't know how I could possibly trust her again, if I'm being completely honest. Deep down, I don't think she cheated on me, but it doesn't mean that she didn't lie to me repeatedly just to cover herself. What should I do? This is a pretty terrible situation, because this guy's girlfriend moved abroad to be with him after she went behind his back just to meet up with her ex, just so she could get closure. I mean, they even agreed mutually that they would talk about that before she did it, but she tried to foreshadow the situation by saying, hey, listen, I might run into him while I'm there, who knows? Like, that's so disgusting, it's not even funny. I don't think she cheated, but she definitely lied to you, and to me personally, that's a big deal breaker. And you said it yourself, you will never be made to look like an idiot like that ever again, especially if you've already been cheated on. So if I was in your shoes, I would definitely be reconsidering this relationship. It really does suck that she moved her entire life out there, but me personally, I would not want to live with someone or be in a relationship with someone who's just gonna lie to me behind my back, as well as purposefully try and hide something major like this. And this really is a big deal in my opinion. But what would you do in this situation? Would you take this person back if they lied to you like this? Or would this circumstance be a deal breaker? Let us know down below. My mother-in-law is constantly getting upset at me for not conforming to how she thinks we should raise our child, and my husband will not stand up to her. And at this point, I don't know what to do. I am Caucasian and my husband is Chinese. He's from Beijing, but his parents moved the family, including him, here to the USA when he was about 13. Growing up, they lived in Minnesota. His mom regularly visits China and maintains her citizenship there. She is there for about half the year on any given normal year. I usually get along with her okay. I have a bit of a stubborn personality, and we had some extremely rough patches initially, as culturally, she feels that I should listen to her, and she feels that she should have some kind of authority over us since she sees us as kids. And to be honest, this is completely different from how I was raised. Once we managed to jump jump past this hurdle, we had relatively few problems. Together, my husband and I had a 5-year-old daughter, and my mother-in-law helped in the early stages by staying with us for a while to help provide care for the kid. Honestly, I was never a huge fan of this situation, but my husband wanted to save money. Ultimately, having her as well as my father-in-law there probably cost us more than daycare, as we were paying all the bills for 2 additional adults during their stay. They stayed for about 6 months. They are visiting for about 2 months now, and while I'm happy to let them bond with their granddaughter, I have been getting some weird questions from my daughter about why the United States does certain things and why we live here instead of in China. My mother-in-law talks to my daughter only in Chinese, and she does this to try and help her learn Chinese. But one of the ways I found that she teaches Chinese is by reading the Chinese state-sponsored news to my daughter, which includes a lot of anti-American sentiments and mostly pro-China messages. As a full disclosure, I don't think America is perfect, and I really don't feel like my daughter has to love America, but I do take issue with being fed propaganda from another country that is a government that is much different than the United States, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't be okay with my own parents reading to her from Truth Social. I honestly don't want any form of propaganda fed to my daughter. When I brought it up to my husband, he just dismisses it, saying that we should be thankful that his mom is teaching her Chinese in the first place, and that she's a smart girl who will figure things out eventually. I personally don't feel that intelligence and buying into propaganda are so tightly related, and I am a bit worried that she's getting painted this picture that we're living in some kind of nightmare state and that the amazing China is just on the other side of the road or something like that. My mother-in-law says I'm being overly sensitive and that my daughter doesn't really understand what she's hearing and that she just needs to hear some Chinese to learn it. My question is, how should I address this moving forward? It's a tough situation because they are visiting for a couple of months and this is pretty early in their visit. I'm really feeling frustrated and I feel outnumbered and alienated. What should I do? I can completely understand where you're coming from, where you don't want your daughter to be exposed to this type of propaganda from another country. It really doesn't seem fair. And you're right, America definitely has its own problems. But if you want to teach a young child Chinese, or any other language for that matter, I don't think propaganda is the best way to go about doing it. So in my opinion, it would probably be a good idea to maybe buy some Chinese books that are age appropriate for a 5-year-old, give it to the mother-in-law and say, hey, could you read these instead? You can still speak to my daughter in Chinese and she can still learn from you, but we can avoid any type of propaganda that I honestly don't feel comfortable with. If your mother-in-law really is all about trying to teach her about Chinese and how to speak this language, then she really would be okay with some kind of book that she can read to this little girl. You could do nursery rhymes, you could do action songs, you could even go to your husband and see if he has any Chinese books packed away in like a box or something, dust those off and give it to the mother-in-law. I think looking online, you can find Chinese books for children pretty quickly and order it pretty rapidly through some website that can offer that. So there are solutions here, especially since you want to try and avoid propaganda being fed to your child. So hopefully your mother-in-law is agreeable to this extent and is at least willing to come to some kind of compromise when it comes to teaching your daughter how to speak and understand Chinese. My roommate is making me feel incredibly uncomfortable and I don't know how to confront him or what to do. So for context, I'm a 21-year-old female living in an apartment with my roommate who's 33 years old. We were both in the same friend group and we both needed a new place to stay at the same time, and I was unable to live with my now ex-boyfriend, so we applied to be roommates at our new apartment. Everything seemed to be going great at first. He was really nice, we both had stuff going on, we would go to work, hang out with our friends when we could, and then go to bed. All fairly normal. That is until about 2 months ago. I struggle a lot with my mental health, and I had a little bit of a breakdown, followed by a bad breakup. My roommate, who I will call Larry, that's not his real name, took it upon himself to help cheer me up. I really appreciated it, and we stayed up watching movies and stuff to take my mind off of everything, but he kept getting weirdly close to me. Normally, I keep pillows between us on the couch because I was in a relationship. Well, apparently me being newly single was an invitation for him to put his head on my lap. He started being really clingy, wanting hugs from me all the time. Whenever I'm at work, he's constantly texting me, asking when I'll be home and what I want for dinner, even though I'm the one that cooks for us. I've always casually said I love you to our friend group when we say our goodbyes, but he started saying it to me more often, just randomly out of nowhere. He constantly tells me how pretty I am, just randomly in conversations. The other day, we both had the day off, and I logged onto my computer to play games with another group of friends, and he came into the room crying, asking why I didn't want to hang out with him and how he wishes he could make me happy like they could. All of our friends know that he's he's ace, but it really feels like he has a crush on me. He's brought up in conversation several times, several jokes about him being a virgin, and he always glances at me when he says it, like he's trying to drop a hint. Despite me telling him that I don't like when he compliments me or hugs me that much, as well as telling him to stop it, he simply refuses and ignores it. Or if he does, it's only for a day before he goes right back to doing it. It's gotten to the point that I've been picking up extra shifts at work, making plans with my family, or straight up pretending to sleep in my room so I don't have to hang out with him. Even doing that, he seems to get upset when I tell him that I'm hanging out with my mom or working. I do feel bad for him, because in our friend group, it's really only me and 2 others that he can call his friends. He constantly tells me that I'm his best friend when I barely see him as a close friend. But ever since my breakup with my ex, he seems to have made that bond even stronger in his mind, acting like he's my savior or something like that. He's become codependent on me, and it's really weird. I've told him before that he's making me uncomfortable, but I don't know how to confront him about this without making him cry or making my living situation even more awkward or potentially dangerous. How do I talk to him about this? What should I do? First off, I want to say that this guy is crying because he's trying to use that to manipulate you. He wants you to feel bad for him so he can try and keep you around. He has completely disrespected your boundaries and the fact that you've told him, no, I don't want you hugging me or touching me. Like, there really is no good excuse at this point. I think first off, you need to tell him straight up, stop touching me, stop bothering me. I am not interested in you romantically and you're crossing the line. If he gets upset and he cries, good, let him cry. He is only throwing these temper tantrums because he can no longer violate your boundaries. And I'm a big believer that when someone shows you exactly who they are, you should believe them. And if this guy's gonna disrespect your boundaries, as well as manipulate you by fake crying, then it might be time for you to find another living arrangement. This guy clearly does not get it, and he's not picking up the hints that you're dropping. So if anything, I would talk to your parents. I would tell them straight up, hey, my living situation got really sketchy, and I need to move out like fast. And then make the steps necessary to get out of there. You do not need to live in that kind of situation. And sure, it's not ideal for you to have to move because of this weirdo, but you said it yourself. This living situation is awkward and potentially dangerous. And in my opinion, that's more than enough reason, despite the fact that he's disrespecting your boundaries, for you to get out and find somewhere else to live. An entitled Karen secretly records me and tries to get me fired from an athletic program as a coach, claiming that I was too out of shape to be a coach on this kid's program. But my boss was absolutely not having any of this and put this Karen right in her place. Here's what happened. So I recently had an emergency appendectomy and recovery has been very slow. So because of that, I had to take time off from my own athletics, but worse, from coaching in the kids sports program I'm currently involved with. The experience as a whole made me step back and realize I really built my whole identity around being active and healthy. So the hit my physical abilities took as a result of being sick, as well as the healing process, has made me feel lost. I've been working to regain the joy I used to experience from exercise without going, oh, you used to be so much faster than that, or saying something like, your technique used to be so much stronger. I don't want to feel like I don't fit in anymore. I want to enjoy myself regardless of the level I'm at. But ironically, the anxiety about not being able to do what I used to has made regaining those abilities a bit difficult. It made me self-conscious about exercising in public spaces, but I was starting to get over it as friends convinced me the source of my concerns were all in my head. There is no way to get back to it other than training. So despite the anxiety, I started running again as soon as the doctors approved it. I went to the local track and just did a few slow laps each morning, building up speed every few days. And I've only just been authorized to add some sprints and bodyweight strength training to the mix. Occasionally, there are a few other people at the track, but I didn't really notice because I run with headphones on and I try to zone out in these lighter sessions. But little did I know that my friends were wrong. It was not all in my head. In fact, I was being watched, and more than that, I was being judged, which really is my worst nightmare at this stage of building back my strength and speed. On Friday, I was setting up for practice at the kids program, and the head coach asked me into his office because apparently a parent had filed a complaint. When I step into his office, I see a parent I don't really know too well, and this is where the entitled Karen steps in because she had some very specific complaints about me. The meeting almost didn't happen because of the Karen's initial refusal to put on a mask, which was required by facilities at the time. But eventually, her desire to tell on me for whatever she thought she had on me overrode her freedoms to infect everybody. I was a bit nervous, as anyone would be when they're called to a meeting with their boss over a complaint, but I figured it was basic complaints, like maybe she wanted her kid to start more. Or maybe she wanted her kid at a different position or something like that. But instead, I sit down in the office, and this entitled Karen is playing my boss of a video of me running on the track. And this was all filmed from very far away. Mind you, this track is surrounded by stadium-style risers. When I saw this, I was horrified, both because no one is ever really totally used to seeing themselves on video, and because I was just embarrassed about how slow I was. But most importantly, why was this virtual stranger that I had never personally met filming me while I ran on my own time at a private facility? She then went on to explain that her 8-year-old son, one of the players on my squad, was lapping me in the video and was then insisting that the coaches needed to hold themselves to higher athletic standards than the younger players if they want to prepare them for college teams. Again, her son was 8 and I had an appendectomy. Apparently, her son would sometimes be running on the track while their older brother was practicing on the field nearby. I never noticed. The kid is still relatively new to me, and I don't pay much attention to the other people on the track. My boss patiently but firmly explained to this entitled Karen that my physical abilities are not the parents' concern, and all personnel are closely managed by the head coaches who understand each unique situation and what's appropriate, and that her son wouldn't be impacted. The entitled Karen then went on to say that my being out of shape was probably connected to why I had been taking so much time off lately, which is technically true if you count being in the hospital as taking time off. She also complained that the personnel changeover isn't good for the kids. My boss again reiterated that the head coaches hadn't changed or taken any time off, and that I was still one of the most skilled in the area that I instruct, so this was not her concern. She then asked in typical Karen fashion if there was someone else she could speak to, but he explained that he was the owner and the founder of this program, so no, there was no one else. I knew my boss was intentionally avoiding saying what had happened to me, or even alluding to health issues just to protect my privacy, but I figured maybe being transparent with her would show her how ridiculous she was being. But when I explained my health issue, she just immediately turned to my boss and said, "Well, maybe you should just furlough them until they're healed and bring on a healthy coach in the meantime, because my son needs someone out there who can keep up with him." And at that point, I just about had enough. My boss respected what I was trying to do, but made it clear that we weren't going further with that strategy to avoid setting a precedent of sharing coaches' personal circumstances. He then had to walk this lady through why people take time off in the first place, and that their personal health status was none of her concern. This entitled Karen still kept trying to kick up a fuss, but the coach wasn't having it, and finally told her that he had to get back out on the field, as well as back to her son and everyone else's kids. She then started physically leaving, but continued to complain about how she was not satisfied, and how she would not be recommending us to other parents. Which, by the way, as a little pro tip, that's not a very good way to conduct yourself with people who make recommendations to scouts concerning family culture and team interactions. The coach at this point wasn't prepared to leave, and instead he stopped her in her tracks to tell her if she was found to be surveilling or otherwise harassing any staff members ever again, she would be permanently banned from the program. No games, no practices, no team social events, no presence in our buildings, and no clemency. Nothing. She would be gone. So that was incredibly satisfying to see. Her son is good, average at best, and I'm personally glad that the consequences were focused on booting her out rather than limiting his opportunities to have fun playing. So then we went out and had a great, happy, safe practice. This was still a pretty upsetting event for me personally though, and I'll never unsee the discouraging video of me running, but it was ultimately reassuring to know the other staff had my back. Because you know what? Leaving that Karen in the dust is just another step on my road to recovery. How much of a scumbag do you have to be to try and get somebody fired because of their personal health? Like, did this lady really think that she was clever, hiding in the bushes and filming this person as they're trying to run around the track and get healthy? From what I've heard, appendectomies can really take it out of you, and it makes it really hard to do any kind of exercise. So the fact that this person was just struggling around a track to build back up some kind of athletic ability should be celebrated instead of recorded and mocked, which is exactly what this entitled Karen was doing in my opinion. But thankfully, their boss was on their side and backed them up 100% as they put this entitled Karen right in their place. I'm afraid that my boyfriend's lack of life skills is killing my love for him, and I honestly don't know what to do. So my boyfriend is 31 years old and I am 23, and we have been living together for a few months. I never like to judge someone's upbringing because you never know all the details of someone's family or anything like that, but it's clear we were raised very differently. My boyfriend just moved out of his parents' house last year, and up to this point, I've been living alone for several years now. We've known each other also for several years, years. I'm a firm believer that the world is a vast place with a lot to experience, and it's a shame to not grow and try things, like going out there and traveling or something along those lines. Well, my boyfriend does not know how to cook at all. In fact, when we cooked together for the first time, it was the first time he ever touched raw chicken. He even just tried broccoli this year for the first time. Our cleaning standards are also vastly different as well. Once a week, I will clean the bathrooms, and throughout the week, I will vacuum and wipe down the countertops. He thinks cleaning the bathroom once a week is way too much work. I usually do this alone, but when I ask for help, he complains about it hurting his back, and he won't finish the job. And anytime he does try to help, he will have to ask me where all the cleaning supplies are even located, even though he should know this. I am constantly having to hold his hand in this regard. I just want him to wake up one day and have the initiative to clean or to learn how to cook something not frozen. This is so alarming that I'm worried that our future kids together will have no life skills, and that is just not acceptable for me. When I asked him for help cleaning last weekend, I told him that it would literally take less than 10 minutes of his time. He responded by saying, "Well, that's my 10 minutes, you know. It's controlling that you would demand I clean on your schedule." And when he said this, I was so incredibly hurt. He simply doesn't get it. I spend every weekend for hours cleaning, not to mention cleaning up after him throughout the week, picking up all of his unfinished tasks, as well as making sure to wash the sheets at least once a week, because I honestly don't think that they would ever get washed if I wasn't the one throwing them in. And when I try to explain this to him, he says that that is way too much. In fact, he brushes his teeth maybe once a day if he remembers. Am I being unreasonable here? I really love him, but I don't want to handhold someone or teach them. I totally understand not knowing how to do certain things in life, but why can't he just literally Google it? Is this even solvable? It's filling me up with resentment and killing my love for him. What should I do? The way your boyfriend is acting is really disturbing. He is 31 years old and he doesn't know how to do these things? Like, really? Not even the basics of washing clothes or cooking? That's a big red flag in my opinion. And he just moved out of his parents' house. Now don't get me wrong, I get it. Sometimes to make ends meet, you gotta move in with your parents. That's not what I'm saying. But it sounds like the person involved in this story is someone who is fully capable of living on their own and starting their own life. If anything, it seems like they just haven't done anything to further themselves as a person. Like, it really seems like they haven't made any attempt to develop any kind of life skills. How do they function? How do they get things done? That's just not okay. I can understand someone in their early or late 20s having that problem, but he is 31 years old. It's time to grow up and start being responsible. So I think if anything, it's time to have a conversation with him and say that he needs to step up, because this is causing problems in the relationship. I'm sure you do love him, but I really think that if he really does love you, he will make the steps necessary to try and change and be more responsible around the house. And that includes daily hygiene, as well as cleaning up after himself and cleaning the house. Otherwise, this is just going to cause problems, and without some kind of communication, I seriously don't think this is going to get any better. My brother's wife exposed a secret I told him in private in front of my whole family, and now I don't know what to do. My relationship with my brother has been deteriorating ever since he got married. For some context, he had a wedding in his wife's home state but didn't invite his family members. Their wedding was all over social media, and he rented out an entire hotel for 3 days. He paid for everything using money from the family business. This happened 6 years ago, and everyone in the family is still upset about it. When we told him we were upset that he told us he wasn't having a wedding, he acted like we're being busybodies and needed to mind our own business. We had family meetings about it, and he said he wants to keep his two families separate. Whenever we are around him, he doesn't mention his wife or marriage, and we don't ask him about her. My family lives in the same city as him and his wife, but we see him every day and his wife about 4 times a year. The problem started a few months ago when we wanted to travel, but we had to lie about it to my parents. Because in Asian culture, women are not allowed to travel without a male companion. I confided in my brother about my plan to lie to my parents, and he agreed to help me do it. A few days before I was supposed to leave for my trip, my brother and his wife come over for dinner. As my entire family is sitting around the dining table, I made a joke about being broke, and my sister-in-law chimes in and says, "How can you be broke if you're going on a vacation?" My entire family looks at me confused and asks me what my sister-in-law is talking about. I basically acted like I had no idea what she was saying and that she must be confused. I had to cancel my trip because my parents would never forgive me if they found out that I had lied to them. When I saw my brother a few days later, I told him that I no longer consider him family because he ruined the only chance I had of going on vacation. This all happened a year ago, and I have seen my sister-in-law 2 times, and both times, I said hello and just went into my room to avoid her. Since then, I only share polite greetings with my brother and don't really talk to him. Not being invited to the wedding hurt me, but her exposing my secret was the breaking point. This wasn't the first time she has done something like this either. I have mental health issues, and I used to talk to my brother about them, but every time I saw my sister-in-law, she would talk to me about my mental health and lecture me about all my life problems that he told her about. She does this to all my family members. We tell him something in private, and then the next time you see his wife, she'll mention it to you. No one in my family tells my brother anything anymore because we don't want her knowing about it, and we have been distancing ourselves from him entirely. Now my brother is upset with us and is complaining that we don't support him. But how can we support him if he doesn't respect our privacy? What should I do? Your brother is 100% at fault here. You're telling him private information that you would expect he would keep private, stuff that you would share between siblings. And the fact that he's blabbing this to his wife, and then this wife is so openly exposing you about it, is really, really toxic. So you have every right to cut him off and distance yourself from this man. You do not have to deal with this. And in my opinion, I would not tell him a single thing anymore because he is just gonna keep doing this, and that's not fair for you. And he is only upset because there are finally consequences of his actions, not because he feels bad about what he did. You have now set a very clear boundary, and he's upset that you did that. And that, in my opinion, is a clear sign that this person is not healthy for you. I don't care if he is your brother. And the fact that he ruined your chance at a vacation after his wife chimed in about something that is definitely none of her business, essentially destroying your plans days before you're about to leave. I mean, that's so unbelievably toxic, it's not even funny. So no, I would not let him back in your life, and I don't blame you for cutting him off. He, as well as his wife, are incredibly toxic, and you do not need that in your life. My next door neighbor keeps asking me for rides, and it's really starting to become inconvenient and uncomfortable, and I am honestly not sure how to get them to stop without upsetting them or causing any problems. What should I do? The title pretty much says it all. I'm a 38-year-old female, and I live in an apartment building where my neighbor across the hall doesn't have a car. There's 3 of them in total. One's 25, one's 29, and another is 43. Occasionally, they ask for rides, and I try to be helpful in emergencies, but I just can't be their regular form of transportation. I don't want to be a solution that they rely on all the time. I could list millions of reasons why I feel this way, but mostly it's just the fact that they're so selfish. For example, a few months ago, they asked me to take them on an errand that is literally 30 minutes away on a good day. So overall, they took away an hour of my time. They did pay me for gas, but the time is what kills me. This errand has now turned into a monthly thing, and I feel trapped, and I don't know what to do in this situation. The last time they did this, they only gave me a few extra bucks for my time, as if that's gonna compensate me at all. How can I get out of this entire situation without being a jerk? Because that's honestly the last thing I want to do. To make things more complicated, they pet sit for me when I'm out of town, but in the end, I pay them $15 to $25 a visit, and I review my security cameras religiously, and they aren't even there for more than 3 to 5 minutes a day, which really upsets me, but that's a whole nother problem. I think they see pet sitting as doing me a favor, when in reality, I see it as me giving them a chance to make extra money, and I have expressed to them repeatedly that I can find someone else to do it, and that they can say no if they don't want to do it. In fact, I literally do feel like even them pet sitting for me is me doing them a favor. They even used to knock on my door pretty consistently just to ask if they could borrow some money. How on earth do I get out of this situation without being a jerk? To be completely fair and to be completely realistic, if they ask for a ride every once in a while, I wouldn't mind. But regular errands that take up so much of my time, that is just unacceptable for me, especially when these errands take so many hours out of my life and prevents me from doing other stuff. How can I handle this situation? What should I do? It sounds like the original poster in this situation is definitely stuck in the mentality of being a people pleaser. They obviously don't want to come off as a jerk, and they don't want to offend their neighbors by telling them no, but at the same time, they're completely getting taken advantage of. These people are using this person's car just so they can get around and do whatever they want, taking hours collectively out of their day just so they can do something that they very easily could have gotten a car and done themselves, or if anything, use public transportation to get done. It's not fair for the original poster, so I completely understand where their frustration comes from. I think it's also really important to remember for this original poster that they are not the jerk for saying no. If anything, their neighbors across the way, who are literally just taking advantage of them, they are the jerks. They're the ones treating you poorly, and you gotta remember that going into this. So how do you say no to these people? You say it just like that. No, I'm sorry, I cannot give you rides anymore. And that's the end of it. And then from there, you can find a dog sitter who can take care of your dog while you're off doing other things. And I can guarantee you that dog sitter's gonna spend more than 5 minutes checking on your dog just to make sure it's breathing practically. It's not fair for your dog, it's not fair for you, and you should not have to put up with this in my opinion. They have no claim over your car or your life in any way, shape, or form. So it's time to put your foot down and set some healthy boundaries, because otherwise they will only continue to walk all over you. My wife changed dramatically after we got married, and now I'm not really sure what to do. My wife and I dated for about 6 years. We are fairly different and come from very different backgrounds, but we had what I thought was a really strong relationship. We got married and everything seemed wonderful, until while on our honeymoon, she casually mentioned that she wished she hadn't gotten married. And this was on our honeymoon. I was completely blindsided by the comment, but when I questioned her on it, she said she just meant that it felt like we were so young to be a married couple. On that same trip, she mentioned that she no longer wanted to live in the state where my family was, but instead closer to her family. We had talked before about getting married at length, of trying to eventually live in my family state. I was initially upset, but given that it's fair to want to be near your own family, I said okay, so long as we live somewhere with a good airport so I can still travel to visit my family. After we got back from the honeymoon, she stopped saying I love you. If I said I love you to her, she might mumble it back, but most times she would just give me some grumble of agreement. When I asked her about it, she said that she didn't feel we needed to say it to each other because we both know that we love each other. I told her that I felt like I needed to hear it, especially after her comments on wishing we hadn't gotten married, but she dismissed it by saying that we're just different in that way. About a month later, she told me that she no longer wanted biological children. She has never wanted to be pregnant and have kids herself, but we had spent a long time talking about having a surrogate. She knew that having kids was a super important thing for me, and this really would be a deal breaker in my opinion. She says she changed her mind on surrogates since the wedding, which was about 2 months ago, because she thinks it's unethical. She's open to adoption, but I really want to have a biological child. This next one she told me in tears, and I think because she knows how much of an issue it is for me. With how many big things she's told me over the brief time that we've been married, I'm starting to get the impression that she wants me to get a divorce, but she is too afraid to do it herself. I think she fell out of love with me a while ago, but got stuck in the whirlwind of the wedding and couldn't find a way out. We're trying couples counseling, but I'm so hopeless about it. I'm looking for advice on what to do now. Is there a world in which this is salvageable? I was so excited for a life together, and now I can't imagine what my life is going to look like. I'm also horrified about being divorced at the age of 30. My wife is such a big part of my life and is intertwined with all of my social and family circles. My family is going to be absolutely crushed, especially since we spent $50,000 on the wedding just a few months ago. What should I do? What a tragic situation. You spend $50,000 on a wedding to a woman you thought loved you, and then you go on your honeymoon only for her to then say, psych, I don't think we should have gotten married. I don't love you like that. That is absolutely horrible. I can only imagine what that must feel like. It almost makes me think if there were maybe some signs before the marriage that she was really feeling this way, but she just was trying to hide it. Like, I would almost want to know if there were some kind of conversations going on or some behavior that would even indicate this. Because who goes from being married to suddenly saying, whoops, I don't like you? And the original poster has it right. They're basically saying, hey, I don't love you, let's get a divorce, but they don't have the guts to say it themselves. How unbelievably toxic. If I were in your shoes, I would do it exactly the way you're doing it. I would at least give couples counseling a try. Maybe that can help sort out your issues, and maybe she can fall back in love with you. It's not a guaranteed thing, but I mean, who knows? You might as well try, right? But if that doesn't work, you better believe I'm getting a divorce. This cannot be my life. I cannot be married to someone who blatantly says, on my honeymoon of all places, that she does not love me like that, and she does not want to be married. That is tragic, and I can only imagine how heartbreaking that was. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.